All right, good evening. I've got 6:30. Mayor Tome here to call this Columbus Common Council regular meeting to order. Today is October 13th, 2020. Pat, when you're ready, could you please take a roll call for us?
Adams.
Present.
Gray.
Present.
McCabe.
Here.
Pfeifferone.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Tome.
Here. Thank you. People on Zoom, can you hear us all right in the room this evening? All right, got lots of thumbs up there. Great. All right, if able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. Next item is to approve the agenda for the evening. This is a makeup meeting from a postponed meeting from last Tuesday, and the agenda has not changed unless there's any items of discussion for deletion or alteration. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Alder Adams seconds.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion on that? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda is approved. On to correspondence and communications. I've been told by City Clerk we didn't have anyone signed up to participate via Zoom for citizen comment this evening. However, we do have 3 names for people that have signed up in person. I'll take them in the order that they signed up. The first that we have this evening is Ron Curtis. Ron, if you could approach the podium, just state your name and address. Hold on. There we go. Now your microphone is on. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Ron Curtis. I live at 100 Brookside Lane in the city of Columbus.
Go right ahead.
Okay. My purpose tonight is that I'm here wanting the city to resume its effort to reduce or improve the flooding situation in our Parkview subdivision. What we're looking for is both a short-term and a long-term approach. And by short term, I mean something that's going to help us in the near term, and by long term, I recognize that the city is interested in looking at our subdivision along with bigger issue of flooding in the city of Columbus. So with that being the case, I've been making an effort to get this as a discussion item on the council agenda, but haven't been successful until now. So with that being the case, I'm asking that the topic become a regular city council agenda item so that we can take comments and move the project along, or alternatively, that we schedule a public informational meeting and then proceed from there. And as some background on the situation, in June 2008, there was some very severe flooding in our subdivision, and I know of 3 homes that had water enter the homes, including mine. We then approached the city, had a meeting with them. The city moved ahead with addressing the problem. In December, they worked with an engineering firm. In December 2010, there was a PowerPoint presentation. In January of 2011, there was a draft stormwater flooding and alternative analysis that was put out by the engineering firm. The city engaged that firm in September of 2010. There was a public informational meeting in October of 2010. A quote from that 2011 report was that a common opinion of the people in the subdivision was that removing 2 48-inch culverts in Fireman's Park would provide a dramatic impact to the flood elevation, and modeling results showed this to be true, close quote. Modeling demonstrated removing the 2 culverts provided remarkable impact to the flood elevation in that area. One of the alternatives looked at in that report was do nothing. It said that does not address the flooding issues, and the creek flooding would likely get worse over time. It went on to say that most of the Second Ward Creek is within public property. Second Ward Creek is a stormwater facility that must also receive maintenance in order to control flooding. It said that, and this was a concern that had been sent back to me in the various emails that I've sent out, that there's a concern about more flooding downstream. One of the things that this report looked at was whether that was the case. The modeling said that there would be no measurable impact on the flood elevation downstream. Okay, so in 2012, there were some changes that were made. The recommendations in the report were essentially in a least expensive, least impact type approach. And so the less expensive ones were done initially, got less impact for it. It wasn't until this year, at 2020, that we had, and it's hard to breathe under here, that we had a storm that was essentially similar to the one in 2008. And in this storm in 2020, 2 homes had water that entered the homes. And the third one, mine, did not, because we took some measures to prevent water entry. We glass blocked shut some windows that had allowed it to enter the time before. And the water did come up again to the level where if we had not done that, we would have had water in our home also. So, so with that being the case, I tried to get it back before the city so that we can look at this here. The report went on to say that the recommended plan of all the various alternatives that were listed is intended to be implemented over a period of several years. This was done back in 2010. Some changes were made in 2012. Here we are, 8 years later, in the same situation. One of the measures, or part of the culvert removal, was to remove the culvert at the Deer Park. So part of that is already done. Now we have the part from the Public Works building, excuse me, the Public Works building going back up to near the high school. And while I could spend some time describing the flooding, I won't do that. I have some photos here that show what the flooding looks like. And I don't know if you have the ability to look at them or not. It also shows what the flooding situation in the park looks like, that essentially backs water back up into our subdivision. So this is an example of down at the park, and this is after the water has receded. There's a high water line here. The water's gone down. When the water's high, I'm at home fighting a flood. I'm not down here taking pictures. So I have photos, but I'm not going to talk about what that looks like. What I can't tell you, or what I could try to describe, is what it feels like. When the water's coming up, you don't know how high it's going, and you don't know what you can do about it. So that's why I'm back here wanting the city to pick up where we left off. Okay, and so I'd like to get it as a again, regular item that somehow we're able to address. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. All right, up next we had Max Chu. You can just cite your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Max Chu. I live at 321 Fairway Drive here in Columbus. We are a new family, new residents here, and I'd like to start off with saying thank you. You guys have an amazing town that you've created, and I'm sure that's large part to leadership, so thank you very much. I'm one of the 44 homes directly impacted by the Parkside flooding. That's a good number of homes. So far, the damage from the last rainfall was just prior to when we bought the house. We didn't realize until we started seeing pictures on, from news reports and whatnot. But that was $20,000 in one home. And anyways, all to say, before it gets worse, I'd really like to see if there's something collaborative that we can do, if there's resources that we can help find. I know that from my years in Michigan, I've seen it go both ways, where, there was very little community involvement, and they were like, oh, the city will take care of it. I would love to be able to help whatever effort that you guys would like to see happen. The maintenance, regular maintenance of the trench is important. I am an engineer. I've walked down that path, and I realized maybe not everything is high cost. Doesn't have to be. But that's not to say there aren't some serious issues that infrastructure that will cost us if we don't address them. I see a lot of erosion as well. And, we have some vested interest for public safety as well. involved. I would like to do a quick shout out. Thank you to Ron for helping pool all the comments in the neighborhood so we don't have like some sort of like a mass venting session. And just keeping the wheels on the bus and keeping this solution focused. Last but not least, I'd like to second the thought that maybe we're not going to solve everything in one fell swoop, at least without unlimited resources. So maybe putting it on as a regular item for update where we are in the process. Obviously, the winter months are very important for planning for the following year. I'd love to see that happen. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next, we had Joel Ulschwager. Joel, if you could just state your name and address, please.
My name is Joe Altschwager. I live at 101 Brookside Lane in Parkview Subdivision here in Columbus. I'm here more or less as support for Ron's comments, and being that I'm probably the longest continuous resident of Parkview, I've been there since 1975. So I've seen a lot of high waters over the years. And I am also noticing a tremendous amount of erosion on the property behind my house. I live right on the creek. And it's eroded at least 4.5 feet off the bank already. And of course, that's all silt that's depositing down through the creek. I walked along with the engineer at one time about, that's got to be 4 years ago. And he was checking the silt depth. He said, this definitely should be dredged out. That was one of the issues in the 08 report, or 10 when they did after the 08 flood. Also, tree removal, the debris. There are trees growing down inside the high water flow line that help restrict the flow. They were all marked with ribbon to be removed. Nothing ever happened. Now, when I asked, why wasn't some stuff done? Oh, we didn't have any money. Well, if they went through all the effort, why wasn't there some budgeting done, in 12 years' time to alleviate this situation? Because I've seen, this last time, like I said, it was very high. There were kids kayaking down the street. There was 1.5 feet or better of water in front of my house, 10 feet from my garage door. Fortunately, I didn't get any in the house, but like I said, it's eroding terribly in back. And furthermore, the removal of that culvert would certainly alleviate a lot of the problems and the dredging, because if you take 2 feet of silt out of the ditch, that increases the capacity of that without getting so tremendously high. There are a lot of issues that could be looked at, but I would like to see something done, because it's, like I said, 45 years I've been looking at this and putting up with a lot of this, and nothing has seemed to progress. And you have to address the additional flow. When you add the hospital now, they've increased their parking lot by a tremendous amount again. They've got a lot of roof area they're draining. You've got Enerpac, all the roof area, parking lot, streets. I realize you have a retention pond, but you'd have to have one half the size of Lake Michigan to hold all that water, because that comes from way out beyond. And once the pond is full, it's full. Then whatever comes in has to go out. And when you get these heavy rains that we're getting more regularly because of the climate change, you have to start addressing that issue, and I think it's high time we start moving forward with that. That's about all I got to say, I guess.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming in and offering your comments on this. Just so you know, this isn't new to me. I know that you've been communicating with our city administrator. You're not being ignored. We've had a very, very busy year onboarding a new administrator. I understand these issues go back 10 years. They're not being ignored. I think the city council definitely sees value in addressing stormwater issues and flooding in Columbus. They're not going to go away. It's just finding room on an agenda and where we start that conversation. We're going to have to involve our engineer and staff, but I will talk to the city council president and Kyle after this meeting, and we will definitely be communicating with you about how we can start that conversation. So, thank you. All right, unless there's anyone else that didn't get a chance to sign up for communications and correspondence, is there anyone else here present? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda then. On the consent agenda, we have the Council and Committee of the Whole minutes for September 15th, 2020. We have applications for operators licenses for the term of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. We had 3 names in the packet originally. Hunter D. Moore, Carmen M. Torres, Heidi L. Ubelacker, and then we had 6 additional names added. Nicholas Ubelacker, Abigail Williams, Macy Williams, Haley Carroll, Jennifer Doe, and Brittany L. Lean. We also had Resolution 19-20, which is a resolution recognizing Public Power Week, which was last week when we originally had scheduled our meeting, and also Resolution 2020, resolution recognizing Fire Prevention Week. Unless there's any questions on the consent agenda or the will to separate any of the items, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Adams moves to approve the consent agenda as presented.
McCabe seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on that motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to new business item number 1, which is consider and approve the Hibbard Street change order number 2 in the amount of $18,704. This was reviewed at the last committee of the whole meeting. There was some additional work required to locate some piping that wasn't clearly identified before the project started on Hibbard Street. I don't think there were many questions about that. It is my understanding that this portion of the change order would fall on the water utility, if that's correct, mostly dealing with plumbing. Any questions from the council on the change order number 2? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve that change order.
Adams moves to approve change order number 2 in the amount of $18,704.
I'll second.
Right, we have a motion and a second to approve change order number 2 for the Hibbard Street project in the amount of $18,704. Any discussion on that motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call?
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pfefferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Oh, Lisa, could you turn off the microphone at the podium? We're getting a little feedback. I think Lisa can get it right. We've got it. Thank you. Thank you for noticing that. I was hearing that. All right, new business item number 2, consider and approve the West Side Lift Station generator addition in the amount of $159,900. This is something that was in the capital improvements plan for the wastewater treatment facility. This has been presented to the council previously. The recommendation from the city engineer is to award the contract to Hogan Electric in the amount of $159,900. Jason Leith is here if there's any questions from the council on this. Trina, did you have a question?
Oh, I just had a really quick question. Let's see. Under fiscal impact, it lists $159,900 plus 10% contingency. Is it plus or is the contingency included?
Yeah, so the bid was 159.9, and that was accepting the mandatory alternate, which was the alternate of the building manufacturer. So it would be the 159.9 plus the amount listed for the contingency. So it'd be in addition to. And I just hopefully, I know last time I apologized, there wasn't a summary in your packet of the bid results, and that should be in here this time. So there was a table here. So if anybody had any information, the one thing I wanted to point out was there was one contractor that, rather than listing the deduct, they listed the price including the deduct. So if you see the Forest Construction had 191,500 as the mandatory alternate, that was the total after the deduct. They just, how they recorded it was a little weird in their bid. But, you know, I think we just understood that they weren't the low bidder anyways. So, but I just want to make sure everybody had the summary to understand our recommendation a little more clear, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jason? I see none. Thank you. All right, this is a budgeted item through the wastewater treatment facility, a planned project. Unless there's any additional questions from the council, entertain a motion to approve the west side lift station generator addition in the amount of $159,900 plus the 10% contingency.
McCabe will make a motion to approve the west side lift station generator addition in the amount of $159,900 plus contingency.
Reed seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the west side lift station generator addition in the amount of $159,900 plus 10% contingency, and we'd be awarding that to Hogan Electric. Is there any discussion on that motion? There's no further discussion. Could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. New business item number 3, consider and approve the crop lease renewal with Hine Farms. It's my understanding that what you're asking us to do this evening is to approve the language in the agreement, not actually a signed agreement with the farmer. Is that correct? Okay, all right.
Yeah, John Hine has reviewed this and he has no issues with it. So once this is approved, I will route it for signature.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. I do see the additional language that was requested in here under terms. As long as the leasee is not in default under any terms of this lease, the lease shall automatically renew for successive 1-year crop periods unless either lessor or lessee gives written notice to the other party by May 1 of the current crop year, which is, I think, what we were aiming for there. The termination clause. Any further questions? Matt's on Zoom. Trina?
Oh, I mean, it seems pretty clear here. So the farmer doesn't need the almost year ahead notice like we were thinking. He's fine with the renewal being that April for that season.
My understanding is it's May 1 would be the after that it couldn't be terminated that year. Written notice to the other party by May 1st of the current crop year of its intent to terminate the lease at the end of the current crop year.
Yeah, so if you did that notification by May 1st, they would get to farm out that year, but then they would not get the next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the crop lease renewal with Hine Farms.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the crop lease renewal with Hines Farms.
Adams seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the crop lease renewal with Hine Farms. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. On to item number 4. Consider and approve the conditional use permit for Taco Bell. Taco Bell. Woo! Front page news. This has gone in front of the Plan Commission from my understanding. I know that Matt's been working with the developer Plan Commission. There is an update on here that the applicant has revised plans as requested by the Plan Commission, council and staff. The final plans are dated September 25th, 2020, and the applicant will be required to complete the project as shown on those plans. Matt, is there anything else any updates that you need to provide to us, or are we just...
No,
okay.
You covered my talking points.
Okay. Well, thank you for putting them in the memo. Let's see. Please note the packet only shows plans that are required for a conditional use permit. Also enclosed with the packet is the conditional use permit that will be recorded with Columbia County. So it sounds like all of the issues have been addressed and we're ready to approve the conditional use permit and move forward. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions from the council on this? If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for Taco Bell.
Adams moves to approve the conditional use permit for Taco Bell.
Alder from will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit for Taco Bell, which will be for Jeff Ferrari at 109 Dick Street. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 5. Consider and approve seating for the Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. This has been discussed at several committee level meetings. I know with former DPW Director Zach Navin leaving recently, it's kind of been handed off to, I think Jenny's been working a little bit with Matt and also with Zach on some alternatives here. It looks like in the memo, the recommendation is to go with the Madison Parks blend, which is the standard seed that's used in all the other parks in the city of Columbus, many parks in this region, and also including rye seed, 50 pounds. My understanding is that that would provide some ground cover so we didn't have to have straw mulch or matting, which is much more expensive. I can say I did a little Googling myself on this, and this is the recommendation that I found for this time of the year as well. I think we know there's going to be more work done down there next year, but this is just to get us over the winter to have something. So Matt's available if there's any questions specifically about the recommendation.
Just one thing to add. After talking with the Oddfellows last week, Wednesday, they met. They are able to use their seeder to put the grass seed into the park for us. So we did approach Mid-State, and then Mid-State asked us, well, what is the Oddfellows using? And it just worked out that we could partner with the Oddfellows on this. So thank you to them for willing to help us in this matter. So
That's wonderful. I know that was another concern as well. So thank you to the Oddfellows for helping us get that seed in. The other note in here is that on the fiscal impact, Kyle had discussed this with me since the last meeting as well, and doing a split between the DPW and the sewer utility, which I think is a wise choice. I know the idea of this project is, based on educational, what we're doing, as a city and a utility for best practices to minimize erosion upstream, et cetera. And it would seem fitting that the sewer utility participates in this project as well. So, are there any further questions? All right, if there are no further questions, we need a motion to approve the seating for the Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park.
Read motions to approve the listed seating for the Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park.
Alder from will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the seating for the Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park, being financed in part by DPW and the sewer utility. Cost of $645, and with the Oddfellows volunteering time to help us get the seed in this fall. Any discussion on that? If there's no discussion, could you please take a roll call, Pat?
McCabe.
Aye.
Piperone.
Aye.
Reed. Aye. Ryan.
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. New business item number 6, consider and approve the mayoral appointment of Brooke Andler to the Columbus Water and Light Commission. Brooke has served, I believe it's a 5-year term. He was not appointed by me originally. I believe he serves as the treasurer or the secretary currently, shows up at all the meetings and does a great job. So his term is expiring by code. Those expire in October, unlike all the other city appointments, which are usually in the spring. So unless there's any questions, I'd appreciate a motion to approve the mayoral appointment for the Water and Light Commission.
Adams moves to approve the mayoral appointment of Brooke Andler to the Columbus Water and Lake Commission.
Ryan, second.
Right, there's a motion and a second to approve the mayoral appointment of Brooke Andler to the Columbus Water and Light Commission. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, and thank you, Brooke, for committing another 5 years of your life to the Water and Light Commission. All right, item number 7, accept and file the 2019 city audits. We were presented the 2019 financial audits by Amanda Blomberg from Baker Tilly at a committee of the whole, special committee of the whole meeting, and we just need to formalize those financial audits by taking action at the meeting this evening. I don't think there was anything significant in the financial audits this year that raised many questions. Any questions about the audits? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to approve and accept and file the 2019 city audits from Baker Tilly.
I'll make a motion to accept and file the 2019 city audit from Baker Tilly.
Adams seconds.
We have a motion and a second to accept and file the 2019 city audits from Baker Tilly. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And number 8 is a companion to that, which is the 2018-2019 sewer audits for the wastewater treatment plant. Again, those were presented by Baker Tilly. Any questions on the sewer utility audit? If there is no questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept and file the sewer audits from Baker Tilly.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to accept and file the 2018 to 2019 sewer audit.
Adams seconds.
We have a motion and a second to accept and file the 2018 to 2019 sewer audit from Baker Tilly. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 9, consider moving the council meeting due to the November 3rd, 2020 general election. Traditionally, we don't have council meetings on the night of an election because our clerks are very busy helping with the elections. So usually we will just go to the Monday or the day before, but the council can choose to do whatever it wishes. So I guess the first question I'll ask is November 2nd open for everyone? Monday evening? Ian, is that workable for you?
Just a second. Yeah, that looks like that should be fine.
Okay, great. All right, we do need to take official action tonight to change that meeting. So if someone wants to make a motion to move the council meeting date to November 2nd instead of November 3rd for the election, that'd be great.
I'll make a motion to move the meeting date from November 3rd to November 2nd due to the 2020 general election.
McCabe will second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move the November 3rd, regularly scheduled November 3rd city council meeting to November 2nd due to the general election. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to number 10, consider and take action on the claims in the amount of $990,400.26. Are there any questions on the claims? I see none. So entertain a motion to approve the city claims in the amount read.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to accept the amount of $990,426.
Adams seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the city claims in the amount of $990,400.26. Is there any discussion on the motion? There's no discussion. Pat, can you please take a roll call?
Piperone?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Adams?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
McCabe?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, on to number 11, report of city officers. I will turn it over to City Administrator Ellefson so I can catch my breath.
Thank you. All right, it's been a busy couple weeks. The budget has been taking up a significant amount of my time. Also kind of helping fill in the gaps at DPW and with the vacancy there. And just a reminder or kind of a status update, I'm stopping into DPW 2 mornings a week and then stopping in as needed and keeping in contact with Jenny and just sort of, helping make sure that everything is covered as well as we can. Jenny and the staff have been really willing to pitch in and very helpful. So things are still going great. But, it's one of those things where we are just kind of covering the regular amount of work with less people. So it's adding up over time. But Jenny and the staff and even Matt is pitching in to help with some driveway permits and things like that are sort of related to zoning, but usually not in his purview. So that's all been incredibly helpful. The DPW recruitment is ongoing. I think today is the last day. We did extend it from the initial day or initial deadline. I'm still not certain that we're going to have an adequate recruitment, getting to that sort of core number of applicants that we'd like to see to feel like we have, a reasonable selection of qualified candidates. So we'll stay tuned on that and see where it ends up. We've also had some other absences and things in City Hall. And so that's made everything just a little bit different and a little bit slower than normal for these past couple of weeks. And everyone's been very helpful trying to fill in those gaps. But, I think that's kind of the name of the game for this last year has just been, making it work. And so that's kind of what we've been struggling with lately. Going back to DPW just a little bit, they've kind of jumped in now with the leaf pickup. So you'll see them around for the next 3-4 weeks. They have different areas and different routes that they're hitting. They even have some nice video of the new street sweeper kind of following after the leaves have been kind of cleared off the curbs. So that will be going on. I do have an update from Pat regarding some of the election notes. The in-person early voting will begin next Tuesday, October 20th, here at City Hall. And that's going to be daily during the regular business hours and about 8:30 to 11:30 and 1:30 to 4:30. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the plan is from 4:30 to 7:30. And then Friday, October 30th, we have to be here until 5 o'clock. But after that time, all in-person early voting will stop. We'll talk at the next meeting about the election day, but those poll hours are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on November 3rd. So far, we've had 1,196 ballots since September 17th, and a little over half are already back. If you received an absentee ballot in the mail and you want to return it by U.S. Postal Service, our recommendation is just to return it as soon as possible because there could be delays there. And if you're not really sure about mailing it, you can also drop your ballot off in the library book drop located in the library parking lot, the City Hall during regular business hours, and also the City Hall after hours drop box, which is in the front entrance on James Street. So those are all election updates, and I think City Hall is going to be coming a lot more busy in the next few weeks as we ramp up to that. We just approved Taco Bell for their conditional use, but they already had their pre-con meeting today. They're ready. I believe they were already very happy with Water and Light because the transformer that was there is already gone, and so we're one step closer to a Taco Bell in the community, which I think most people are excited about. But they're going to see activity going on there very soon. Hibbard. If you've been noticing any of the Facebook posts or updates, some of the curb and gutter on the south end of the project is complete, and they're really planning that first course of asphalt kind of now in the next few days. So that half of the project is going to start looking a lot like a normal street pretty soon. And Jason Letha and I have been working on a couple little small project changes that I think will eventually come across for approval. But otherwise, the progress on Hibbard has kind of continued at its pace. We're not really behind schedule, and they haven't asked for any additional work days or weekends. So things continue to go well, and I think that trend will continue. And that's all I had.
Sounds like you've been busy, Kyle. Well, I didn't email you and ask what you're going to put in your report, but you wiped out everything I had. So I did want to remind people, too, for the leaf pickup, if they're newer to town, that the maps are available on the city website and also available at Public Works, City Hall, and Columbus True Value if they want to know when they're scheduled to pick up in their neighborhood. And also voting, I had that on here as well. I prefer doing early absentee in-person voting because I get to use the voting machine. When I heard about the voting machine a few years ago, it scared me, and now I prefer it. And the reason that I prefer it is that if you make an error on your ballot, it will tell you. It prints out a paper ballot, you put it in an envelope just like a regular ballot, so that's what I prefer to do. And also just want to encourage as many people as possible to either take advantage of the mail-in absentee or the in-person early voting as well to try to minimize the number on election day as much as possible. So that's all I had. Thank you. All right, that's the end of our meeting for the evening. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Alder Piper will make a motion to adjourn.
Adam seconds.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned for a few minutes, and we're going to return with the committee of the whole meeting then. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole rescheduled meeting. It is now Tuesday, October 13th in 2020. The time is now 7:22 p.m. and we are in Columbus City Hall chambers and also have members of staff and one council member participating via Zoom. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams. Gray.
Present.
McCabe.
Here.
Pifferone.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Tome.
Here.
All present.
Okay. This meeting has been noticed with state statutes and local ordinances. I'd like to suggest, prior to taking a motion for the agenda, that we may bump number 11, which is the sign for the Eagle Scout project for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. If we bump that to in front of number 6. Okay. Would everybody be okay with that amendment? Okay. With that, I guess I will take a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the now revised agenda.
Adams seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the revision of moving number 11, Eagle Scout Project for Butterflies Trails Volunteer Park, to in between number 5 and 6 on our current agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Number 4, citizen comments. I don't believe I had anybody signed up this evening, and nobody signed up via Zoom. So move on to number 5, the committee minutes. Within your packets, you have the CHLPC minutes from 8/27 and 9, or 8/27/20, 9/3 of 20, 9/10 of 20, 9/18 of 20, and 9/24 of 20. The Cable Commission from 8/5/20, the Columbus Water and Light Commission from 8/20/20, EMS from 6/3/20, Library from 8/18/20, PFC from 5/9/20, Recreation from 8/10/20, and the Treasurer's Report from August of 2020. Are there any discussion points on any of these committee minutes that are within your packet? Any questions from council? If there are no questions on the minutes, we can move forward then to number, I guess this would be our new number 6, which is review and discuss a sign for the Eagle Scout project for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. Eric Ratz is joining us via Zoom this evening. He had originally approached the city for an Eagle Scout project back in 2019. And the preferred option was for him to construct and install a signage for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. So he is now attached basically his plan for that sign within our packet this evening. So, Eric, hi, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
I'm unable to get a stonemason as the Oddfellows have requested for the sign. So, the plan, I don't think we're able to move forward with that. So, if I am able to, I would like to bring up 2 possible other projects that I could maybe do. One of which being to, on the corner of Fuller Street and is that Dickinson Street, I frequently see more people visiting Washington Park from that direction than Ludington, so the sign there I feel is rarely seen. So I feel like if we were to put a sign on that corner, it would be beneficial. And another point that I would like to bring up about that is that my brother also did his Eagle project in that park, and I was thinking if that were to end up in the same park, that might be some interesting, cool idea. The second project idea that I'd like to propose is, which my brother did, was a bicycle repair station mentioned in or placed in Washington Park, but I feel there are other locations that could benefit from that, as not everybody will be able to walk their bike over there. And one location that is distant that I frequently see people riding their bikes on is by Avalon and in that neighborhood. Avalon Park, sorry. And I would like to know what the possibilities of possibly doing either one of those would be, as I'm not able to obtain a stonemason for the Butterfly Garden Park.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Is the project, or what you have submitted, the picture of the sign for Butterfly Trails, was that a masonry sign initially, or I guess I thought it was made of wood initially?
Sorry, it's a little quiet. Can you repeat that, please?
I guess I was confused because I thought that the sign for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park was made of wood and not masonry.
Yes, the plan was to continue putting it up with wood, but very recently, the Oddfellows decided they would like masonry work with bricks around the base of it, and I'm not able to get one. on the time schedule that I've been given.
Are
So,
you,
so it would be very difficult to follow through with that, and I wouldn't be able to do that by the time I'm aging out of Boy Scouts.
are you talking about the base of the sign or about the
Yes.
sign itself?
The base around the bottom of the sign. To look similar to like a state park sign.
Would it be possible for,
I'm getting some signals that people are having trouble hearing us. Matt, would you be able to provide us any clarification on the base of the sign and what needs to be done or?
Sure. So if you've been to Kiwanis Park, that was the sign that I've had Eric model his design after. And that sign does not have any sort of masonry base to it. It's basically, I believe it's sort of supported by two wood posts. So essentially the masonry request is from the Oddfellows, and it really, goes above and beyond what we've done at our other parks. So I really think it's more of the council whether or not what they want the sign to look like, more so than the Oddfellows. I guess I respect their willingness to make it look nicer, but I still think we could get a very nice looking sign with just using wood. But that's really up to the council. So.
Okay, Ian?
So, in my opinion, I would assume that you'd be able to do masonry afterwards. And like if there were two wooden posts in the ground holding up the sign, they could go back in and put masonry over top of that, like some sort of stone or brick facade. I don't see the reason to not move forward with the sign as it was designed and planned. And then if the Oddfellows want to add masonry after the fact, I don't see a problem with that.
Trina?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of thinking along the same lines that it could be put on wood posts for the time being without cement footings so that they could easily be pulled up with one of the little grippy type devices. I don't see that the post would need to stop or alter the sign itself.
I just wanted to comment here that I just wanted to thank Eric for all of his work that he's put into this project initially, and just kind of reiterate that, I think regardless of what happens with the base of that sign and what, the Oddfellows are requesting or what council ultimately decides to do, I think that what you've done here is good. And I think that if you feel comfortable, I think we could move forward with your design as it is, and we could work out the design of the base of the structure if the Oddfellows are requesting that, or however they'd like to potentially fundraise for that. I think that, the design that you've submitted is sufficient.
I am comfortable with that.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Are there any, Trina, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask another question. So for the design presented, would you be paying a company? Would you be building it yourself out of wood? Just curious about the plan.
I had like a picture of the Kiwanis sign sent to a business in Madison, signed by tomorrow, that I believe Oddfellows have gone through before. And it was an exact, almost replica of the Kiwanis sign, but instead of saying Kiwanis, it said Butterfly or Volunteer Park, and the same image above it of the town hall.
Mm-hmm.
Made out of wood, and I think just like a little bit smaller dimensions. I think, what was it? I think it was like 3 feet or 4x3. A little bit smaller than the Kiwanis sign, but
Mayor Tome.
So this would be a wood sign then, is that correct?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just
Paul
have
Piper.
one, I just have one just small comment. I just was under the impression it'd be like butterfly trails and volunteer parks are two separate entities, so maybe, I know this is nitpicky, but should be separated by like a colon or a dash?
Yeah, that would be up to the city. I haven't ordered a sign, so if we wanted the language on it to be changed, we could do that very easily.
I'm not sure. I know that our water tower here in Columbus, Eric says Discover Columbus. I know that I don't know if any other parks in town have that same slogan on their signs, but I'm just curious how the council feels about that. Mayor Tome?
I was actually going to say something about that because we had a tourism commission meeting last week, and we've been working on a project for quite a long time now of changing out the wayfinding signs around the community. And actually, the design is somewhat similar to this because it's got the arch top with the city hall logo underneath it, which is very identifiable. So we're going to continue to use that artwork as well. But we did have some discussion about not using the Discover Columbus logo. And I think for a park identifier sign, it's not really that important to have Discover Columbus. It's identifying a park. So I think if you actually remove Discover Columbus, you could have a larger font for the Butterfly Trails volunteer park area, so it would be more visible. But that would be my suggestion as well. I think that the city's looking at developing more of a marketing plan for tourism, et cetera, and Discover Columbus has just kind of been one of those things that's, been used for decades, I guess, and I'm not saying that we're rebranding ourselves, but I don't think it's needed on a park sign personally. So, and if you can have more room and a larger font, I think it would look much nicer.
I like your point there. So if we actually, instead of just a hyphen, if we could just do Butterfly Trails in a larger font and then underneath in a subsequent line, volunteer park.
That's what I was about to say.
Oh, sorry, Trina. Yep,
I have
go ahead.
I have an image of what the Signs by Tomorrow has came up with that I could use for an example. I have it on my phone right here.
Okay.
Am I able to put it up to the camera so it's visible?
You can give it a shot. It might work. Yeah.
I think it's the text backwards.
Yep, we did actually receive that, I believe, Eric.
yeah. Yep.
That's what we have here. Yep.
All right. So Discover Columbus, are we going to have that on the sign? Under that symbol of the town hall?
I think that the concern is, Eric, just that we don't know, first of all, most of the other park signs don't have that slogan. And then as far as just the direction that the Tourism Commission and things are moving and may potentially not have that slogan. So I think it's just a concern that it may seem dated rather rapidly if we include that. Trina, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I just wanted to reiterate the idea for crossing out the Discover Columbus and the Butterfly Trails in rather large fonts. Volunteer Park, pretty large, and then the smaller for the bottom part about celebrating volunteers past, present, future.
Would you like that in 3 lines of text or 2?
So I think what she's suggesting is Butterfly Trails be the top line in the largest font, Volunteer Park in sort of just a little bit smaller font underneath, and then continuing with a third line just saying celebrating volunteers past, present, and future as the smallest font.
And then font size decreasing as it goes down?
Correct. I think that's what everybody, big, medium, little. Any other questions from council? Mayor Tome?
One more question. Is this a one-sided sign?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean that it would be oriented then parallel with the roadway?
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so Eric, do you have all the direction you need, or do you have any more questions?
I have none.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will move on to the original number 6, at review and discuss potential emergency declaration related to COVID. So there is a memo within your packet that was sent out. I believe it was Friday afternoon. So hopefully everybody got a chance to read it. Basically, potential. Do I have the right one here in front of me? Yes. Potentially just discussing emergency declarations. We had had an emergency declaration that expired in May naturally. But now with the sort of rising numbers of COVID-19 in the community and the state as a whole, that it was important for council to have this discussion on, I guess, whether or not we want to potentially pursue another declaration of emergency now. So so essentially, emergency declarations allow us to I guess, in the memo here, it words it pretty well, the additional flexibility to quickly respond to local and regional changes in the threat level, and allowing us to request funding and other assistance if our resources are insufficient to address the local needs. We could also make temporary operational changes as necessary. Any thoughts from council upon reviewing this?
Just giving this a quick perusal, it seems like this is more geared to like the government functions in terms of giving the city more flexibility. In terms of like impacts on businesses, would that like say Anytime Fitness, would that wouldn't close, or I think it's just confined to the city government?
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in that?
I'm going to let Kyle Ellison answer that, yeah.
Well, so I mean, there's a variety of different levels that you could take this to. Typically your actions have to be closely related to the emergency at hand.
Yeah.
I think as we did earlier this year, it was basically all about our operations and closing City Hall, things like that, maybe changing staffing patterns to make sure that not all of our DPW workers were working at the same time, so that if there was a flood, we could be without any public works staff and not be able to respond. So I think that was the primary thing, but in full disclosure, other communities that are much more aggressive with this use the same mechanism, and it's not a different mechanism. It's what you do with it and how you craft your emergency order and how specific or broad you craft the language, and then also kind of what direction and policy the council sets. That's not something we've done in the past, is to go look at fitness facilities or taverns or other places where people congregate and try to enforce some kind of health code. So I think this was more related to our operations.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else share any concerns about operations of city government? So, I see people shaking their heads, so nobody in this room is concerned about making a emergency declaration, or does anybody have any interest in having an emergency declaration, so that if something were to happen, that basically we'd have a contingency and we'd be able to access funding if we requested it?
Are you-
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I'll go. Yeah, in terms of making the emergency declaration, I think it makes sense, you know, just to have that. It's my take on it is, it's something that we have in our back pocket if we really need it to get the funds, or if we really need to, say, close down some taverns or whatever, if things are getting way too big. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that that's necessarily what this is referring to, is taverns.
Oh, no,
or,
but yeah,
or
that's just,
businesses.
okay,
I think
that's
it's
a way out of, okay.
we're talking. I think.
The public works and making sure that people are able to get their.
Yep.
So rotate people to have it, I'm sorry, that's my mistake, I retract that statement, that was a foolish statement.
No.
My fault. But no, I think having the declaration makes sense, just to have some flexibility in there.
I'm sorry, Mike McCabe was first.
No,
Go
no
ahead.
problem. I don't know, do you want to come up with something if you want to count all the city employees, and if a certain percentage are out because of this, ill because of this? I don't know how you want to do it, or 50% of the city employees are out of work or something.
I guess my concern stems from, I know that a lot of our city staff works in very close quarters, whether it's in this physical building or it's DPW or, so I guess that's where a lot of my concern comes from, as I see the numbers rising and rising, and I want to make sure that the city of Columbus residents are getting adequate services and reliable services continued throughout the pandemic, and that everybody can stay as safe as possible as far as the city employees and the community as a whole. So I've seen in other communities, doing just sort of platooning different shifts, things like that. So it's an A day or B day, similar to like what the school is doing, but doing that on a staff level. I guess I want to have a conversation kind of about that, and as well as just what we would do if we were faced with sort of what would be our contingency plan if we were faced with a outbreak or a crisis. I'd rather have this conversation out here publicly and try to get this all hammered out to, I guess what council should do. Obviously, there are laws in place that prevent us from having specific conversations about public health and things like that. But I think I just want to test the temperature of the council and see where we're at as far as having an emergency declaration, and then potentially discussing actual city operations and how that might affect them. Paul Pfeiffer on.
I agree, and I like the fact of coming up with a plan B, C, or D, whatever the case might be. I just, where I'm having issues is putting something in stone right now and saying this is what we should do, is the uncertainty that it changes day by day, or we don't know, does this truly work, or we're wearing masks, which I agree with masks, but some people are saying that after further studies are done, the mask may not be as effective, or maybe the 6 feet social distancing is not. I'm just saying all of these items just seem to be swaying in the wind. It depends on which day, which politician or expert you're listening to. So, I agree that we should have a blank spot for a change on a dime. Coming up with something right now to say what we're going to do when something happens that we don't know what that is my only issue.
Mayor Tome.
I would ask Attorney Johnson to add some comment here. I think that we're getting item number 6 and number 7 a little bit mixed up. We did have an emergency order previously addressing this, but could you please outline that for us, Attorney Johnson?
Thank you. You are getting the two mixed up, but they do run together. So having the conversation at the same time is inevitable, I guess. The emergency declaration that you executed back in March was prepared broadly so that things could be accomplished on a limited, on a very short period of time with quick decisions being made if necessary. And if you are thinking about doing any kind of an emergency order again, I would go that direction again. I think the only thing that is missing from the March emergency order is specifically designating a very small group of people within City Hall that are authorized by the council to make decisions when they come up. Alder Pfeifferone was correct that you could sit here all night long and try to figure out all of the variations on a theme, but when something needs to happen, it's going to be based on the facts that you have in front of you. And I think you'll be a lot better off to create a small group, and I would suggest the mayor, the council president, the administrator, and emergency management director, maybe, in conjunction with Columbia County Public Health, and giving them authority to do whatever is necessary when the situation arises. That might sound like a broad brush, but you are giving these people the authority to make a snap decision, and that might be necessary when the time comes, if only temporarily until the council can have another meeting. And I think that by going that direction, you take agenda number 6 and agenda number 7, and you wrap them up into one nice little package, and that addresses a lot of the issues that you're thinking about.
Thank you, Attorney Johnson. I appreciate those comments. And if we focus back on March, the emergency order that was granted then was, well, before the election, I guess, before some of you were here, but that was the advice that I had gotten from the attorney at that time, was to make it as, it wasn't specific about anything, but it was declaring an emergency because we didn't know what was going to be happening in the coming months, but recovering costs and expenses related to COVID, et cetera, was the main reason for declaring an emergency at that time. And also we had an interim city administrator, we had a new administrator, but there had to be the ability to make a quick decision as things evolved. And I think the environment we're in right now, we don't know what's going to happen in a week or 2 weeks, but if we can't convene the city council to have the discussion and make the decisions, then they have to be done executively. That's what the emergency order allows you to do. So I don't think we need to have very specific language in the order as the attorney states, but when you declare one, then you have the ability to make those decisions. So.
Ian, did you want to speak?
I mean, and Paul, the attorney, basically clarified everything that I've been raising my hand to try and speak of. But 100% we should reinstitute an emergency declaration, in my opinion. As far as the next topic goes, I think mostly we can mirror what the state has already done with a few finer points like the attorney brought up. But as far as our current topic, yes, we should, in my opinion, we should make another emergency declaration.
Are there any further comments from council about an emergency declaration or questions for Attorney Johnson or any? No? Kyle, I guess specifically, if we were going to draft or who would be drafting it? Would it be you?
Probably
drafting it?
myself in conjunction with Paul.
Paul, okay. Do you need further clarification of, I guess what specifically is going to be in the emergency order from council's discussion?
I think we have a good idea about, maintaining its, kind of the breadth of areas that it covers. The one item that Paul brought up that we should identify is what is that group of decision makers that the council is going to kind of vest some temporary authority in to make those on-the-fly decisions.
I'm comfortable with the list, the city attorney, have the mayor and the president and emergency, you, and then the emergency person. I'm comfortable with that.
I guess the only question I would ask from that is, and I agree with that, but does that, does it have to be unanimous between all four of you, or is there like how does the voting in that little group of people get determined?
I would suggest majority. Whatever the majority of the group feels, I think is what you go with. Especially if you're making rapid decisions, there could be philosophical disagreements, but at some point you need to make a decision, and not every decision can be a split decision that waits 2 weeks to come back to council.
I guess that was my question, because there's four people named, so there's really, it's either 3-1 or
50-50 potentially, so I don't know how that would.
You could also authorize 3 people to be voting members and 1 to serve as an advisory liaison position.
Right, and that's what I would suggest here, because I'm not sure that the emergency management director is directly going to be helpful. I threw that out because she at least has some of the knowledge and resources.
Okay. Mayor Tom.
I guess my concern is that if we're going to have an emergency declaration, the point is to allow executive decisions to be made, because the council can't meet and have, come to consensus on a certain issue. I feel like it should be the responsibility of the city administrator, because they're working with every manager, every department head, the utilities. It's their job to do that anyway. I don't think Kyle would, make a decision to shut down the library or the city hall without communicating that information with you or I. What it allows him to do is act quickly if he needs to do that. My concern is we don't need to recreate the city council into a different group and then have, a huge, long meeting. I think that we've all got our eye on the way things are developing. We don't know what's going to happen, but if things change rapidly, someone has to have the ability to do that. So I definitely think it should be Kyle. I wouldn't be making a decision that Kyle didn't agree with as the mayor. If I made a decision he disagreed with, it could come back to the city council, but I think it should be kept as simple as possible so he can communicate with whoever he needs to make those decisions as a city administrator.
Ian, go ahead.
I agree very much with the mayor on that. I think allowing Kyle to make a decision, but I think we should also have a fallout contingency of who comes after Kyle making those decisions. Mayor, then Katie type of thing. I don't think it needs to be a majority vote. It can just be the singular person, but we should have an order of succession in who makes those decisions.
I'll ask Attorney Johnson, just when you brought that up as far as a small group of people who should be, group of people designated to make decisions, is that kind of more what you were referring to versus a voting group of majority rules?
I think it can be done either way. If it was my preference, I would follow what Ian and the mayor just said. I like having one person in charge with some backups, and then having the decision made be in effect until the next time that the city council can convene. And
Okay.
if that has to be in 24 hours, it does, and if that has to be in 2 weeks, it does. It depends on the severity of the situation, but at least you're making a temporary order until the council can get together and either confirm or terminate it.
Thank you. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads that we will most likely have an emergency order put together ahead of our next meeting. And Kyle, thank you very much for working with Attorney Johnson to get that out to us. Okay, and as number 7 relates much to this, it's review and discuss COVID-related considerations for city operations and activities. And so this is definitely referring to specifically to the operations of the city employees, and I guess making sure that we maintain a level of service to the community and that we are keeping, I guess, our employees safe, and basically just the different options that we would have should we want to move forward with some kind of change to the operations due to the increase in numbers in the pandemic. I'm going to turn it over to City Administrator Ellison.
All right, so we threw this together in a relatively rapid fashion, and I don't know that we need a lot of, direct feedback on this. I think maybe the first step we took with planning for the emergency order takes care of a lot of the fine details. However, I do think I'd like to hear, especially as, the one decision maker potentially, I'm interested in feedback because I'm getting a lot of, sort of conflicting information. There's a lot of rising cases. There's new emergency orders coming out from the state, but there's also as many exemptions in there as there are protections. And in particular, when I think of things like, the core services, I'm not as worried about should the police come to work tomorrow. Of course they should. I'm more worried about the very optional things that we do, that we sort of take for granted or forget about, like rentals, hosting public events in a public building, that sort of thing. And, I'm not really trying to take a position on one side or the other, but I know that there's different opinions on it. And so as the one making the decision, I'm interested in a little bit of feedback on if the council thinks we should be making changes or if we should just kind of stand pat for now and then look for, something in the future to tell us to change. As I looked at one of the orders recently, if it's a private party like a wedding where you issue invites and you don't allow, people that don't have invites to come in, the limitation on the gathering to 25% does not apply. So that basically means it's, if you have 500 people you want to cram into the pavilion, we do have a sign that reminds them the governor's order still requires face coverings unless you're exempt from that one. So, I actually heard just today, of course, there was a wedding one time somewhere that had, 150 people and 170 of the 150 turned up positive. So more people than were there came down positive with it. So I'm just really interested to find out, should we be making changes? Should we not make changes? What's the council interested in doing in those more optional activities? I think Ian's got his hand.
Ian, go ahead.
So I think any time that it's, whatever the event may be, regardless of the type of event or how they're invited to it, if it's inside of a public building, we should adhere to the same standards of the state, regardless of the type of event. So reducing to 25%, I believe, is what the state mandate is now. I would be for reducing it to 25% capacity.
I think the concern there, Ian, is that what Kyle was saying is there's an exemption in the latest order by the state suggesting that as long as everybody in attendance received an invitation and was invited to the event, then the 25% does not apply. So then if that were the case, then we would be kind of out, then like an event at the pavilion, for example, could have 500 people, and as long as they were all invited, it doesn't matter.
Right, and that's what I was saying, is we should, if it's in a public building, the type of event or how they were invited shouldn't matter, and we should not that exemption, and we should just adhere to the strict of, I believe it's 25% capacity.
Administrator Ellefson's going to speak on that. Go ahead.
So
Kyle.
just for perspective, just the upstairs of the pavilion alone, 25% capacity is about 245 people. So, you know, I think most weddings that we have would still be under that 25%. So really, the 25% itself, because there is so much open space, wouldn't really change what we're doing. And so, I mean, we could implement that and still be in compliance.
You know, I don't see a reason not to, in my opinion. Like, I think it offers both the city and our citizens and people visiting more protection. Cases are rising dramatically in Columbia County. We should be protecting our citizens.
So
especially when they're inside one of our buildings.
Okay. So you would want to just continue having rentals and services as long as it's 25% capacity, is that right?
Right.
Mike McCabe?
That was my question. Are you talking about rentals in the future? Are you talking about rentals that are already rented out and maybe happening next weekend? I don't know what you're referring to totally here.
The answer is yes. And it could be a phased decision. It could be anything booked right now or anything booked in the next 20 days gets to occur as normal. You could make a decision to no effective immediately. If the virus is rising now, it doesn't make sense to wait. Really any option, because again, this is an optional thing. You know, what we did in the past at the beginning of the pandemic was, I think most people just got a full refund of their money, and a lot of things were canceled. So it could apply to whatever you want it to apply to, really.
And I just want to remind council that there's a lot of services and activities here listed as talking points and also as options that Kyle put together. And of course, this probably, I mean, it's definitely not limited to these. There are others too, so if you have ideas or if you feel a suggestion or you feel the need to bring forth a suggestion, now is the time. Trina Reed?
Goodness. I like the idea of limiting to 25%. I don't know if that should be put as a requirement or as a strongly recommended on a sign or something sent to persons that have already paid and planned for their events. It's just so difficult trying to guess how things are going to be from week to week that I hate to have a hard and fast number.
I think my concern with that is that I don't know how we would enforce that. I don't think it's necessarily enforceable. I'm not going to ask Amy Jo to sit there with a clicker and to count how many people are coming into the event. I know that we continuously seem to be talking about the pavilion, but I mean, there's other areas of that the pandemic is impacting as well. So I guess for me, I would like to see us more focused on just trying to mitigate as much risk as possible to the community. When you have an event that's people are particularly close together, granted the pavilion is a very, very large area, but I think, you could have an event where it would be potentially dangerous and spread throughout the community. I guess that's my fear. And then it comes from a public rental. When there are private venues available and there are other things, I guess are we gonna look back and say, oh my gosh, that was irresponsible? That's my fear. It's not that I want to be the bad guy. I certainly don't like being a bad guy and being like, well, you put all this effort into planning this, and I wouldn't want to set like a specific, I wouldn't want to have a cutoff date either, but I don't have the answers. I also don't want to regret not talking about it, not having this conversation. So, Paul Piper.
I agree with a lot of things that are being said here. And I think that the notion of ticketed events, like, is exempt by the state. However, those would be, like, in my opinion, like a private wedding venue, like the barn outside of town, like, okay, that's a private entity, so that may be excluded from the governor's order. But if it is held in a city building, I think that, that almost nullifies the fact of the invites. And then to echo President Council Ryan, who's going to stand there and count, and who's going to be like, do we leave that in charge of DPW? Are they going to count, or we just say, hey, wedding people, you have to keep track of how many people there, so that like, oh yeah, we're all good. So I think that's a valid concern as well. Who's going to keep track of it? Who's going to enforce it? And how will it be enforced? It depends on where you go in the any neighboring counties, whether it's the governor order is currently being followed or enforced by local law enforcement or sheriffs. It's too much of a mixed bag.
Administrator Ellison.
Just to clarify too, even if the private party exemption doesn't apply, all local government operations and facilities are also exempted.
Yeah. It's about as clear as mud.
Can I just say a little something?
Okay. So I guess what it.
I don't know, I guess we could make the recommendation, but other than that, what could we do? As
It is
far
our
as
choice whether or not we continue to
rent it out at
rent it
all?
out, or what type of rentals, I guess, what we rent it out for, but in general. Ian?
So I think we're kind of confusing our role in government a bit. It's up to us to decide what sort of policies we want to enact in things. It's not up to us to enforce things. Like, that's not what we figure out is how it's getting enforced. Like, it's, what do we want to happen? Do we want to allow unlimited amount of people inside of our public facility? What do we want to do? Like, that's really what's up for debate, in my opinion. Not how are we going to enforce it. That's not our realm.
Thank you, Ian. I guess I understand where you're coming from, but I feel like the reality is if we're going to make unrealistic expectations of our staff, then there's no point in setting any of that precedent in the first place. So if I could say something completely absurd, and sure, we're going to implement that, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to be enforced, nor does that mean that it's possible to enforce it. So it's kind of ridiculous to make, in my opinion, it would be silly to make a rule of just something that you cannot enforce and you know that you're not going to be able to enforce. I'm going to let Kyle Ellison chime in right quickly.
Go ahead.
And just to clarify, because I know tomorrow, some of the people behind me in the room, we're going to be having this very question that's been sitting in my email for a little bit about what am I supposed to tell them? So I'm really looking for, as I'm making these decisions, if there's consensus among the council on should we or shouldn't we, or is it 25% or whatever it is, so that I'm making a decision that's, optional in nature and reflects the sort of will of the council. So You know, it might not be as, you know, bright line, but some kind of guidance on what we should be looking for in answering the question to the weddings and to the holiday craft fair and other events, because they're asking and they're waiting, and Amy Jo's holding reservations kind of in the air, not knowing what to say, because I don't know what to say yet.
Okay, Trina Reed, you had your light on?
Oh, yes. I guess my preference is still to simply have a current recommendation of 25% and then list how many people per building that is. I don't think it's very enforceable, but at least that gives a guideline out there.
Okay. Did you want to speak, Councilor Adams?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the question is, do we rent it out or do we go for the state guidelines at 25%? So my one thought is to say, okay, so if people already have made reservations, make them cap it at 25%. And then I don't know if there's a way that we can tie future reservations to our positivity rate. That might get tricky, like, so if our positivity rate's like, 25%, but it's either that or you say, okay, so if people have reservations, keep them at 25% and then just kibosh everything else until the pandemic leaves, but then that's rough too. So I think I'm gonna go with Trina and go with, keep everything at the state, recommendation of 25%.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Ian, Grade?
I don't think we should use the language recommendation, regardless of your fears of being able to enforce it. If we say, we recommend you do this, but we don't actually expect you to do it, it's just a recommendation. We might as well take down all of our stop signs and put up, please think about pausing before you continue. That's absurd. It should be, this is what it is, regardless of our fears of enforcing.
Okay, Kyle, you have the direction you need? All right. And as far as any of the other items on here, Kyle, did you have any other further concerns?
No, but I think I would recommend that the council keeps it handy, because if the pandemic progresses and we have staff impacts, a lot of these considerations will be something that we'll probably have to talk about on, staffing, how long you pay people if you're not going to allow them to come to work. Do we pay them forever? Do we pay them to a certain point? And those are weighty decisions that the council would have to entertain depending on those conditions. The only other one that I think I'd be interested if there is consensus on, are you looking for changes in operations such as additional work sites where we're splitting, DPW in half and having half report to two different workplaces? Are you interested in platoon staffing that might involve sending people home on alternating days or alternating weeks to keep them segregated so that we don't lose our entire workforce in one department all at once?
That's kind of where my concern lies, and especially during these election times where I know that the city provides election services and there's people coming in and out of City Hall, starting with early voting on the 20th. We need to obviously try to keep City Hall and our citizens as safe as possible during that whole process, as well as be able to, have an effective actual election day held with many of those same employees running that. So that was one of my biggest concerns with all of this, is just ensuring that we have adequate staff for early voting, and then also on election day, and also just being that I know here they work in pretty close quarters. I know that a lot of the shift work type, like with the police and I guess to some degree DPW too, there's a little bit more separation, I think, because the police obviously work shifts. The majority of the time they're in their squads or whatnot. They're a little bit more isolated or separated from their fellow employees more so than I would say that the majority of like office workers or people are here. So I guess that was my biggest concern. And obviously, I think that this is going to be a very large election. It's already currently happening. But that's my concern. Ian Gray?
So in that respect, I think the individual department heads know best how their employees can work and how they could potentially split up shifts, who could work from home, what we could do best to limit interactions. I think each area should come up with a plan of who they have on their staff that could even perhaps, work from home until further notice, how they could split things up and what works best for all of them to keep things running efficiently, but to limit our exposure with one another as much as possible.
So Ian, I guess I would ask you, would you want that kind of thing to be implemented now or implemented if there was a situation?
I think it should have been implemented already, honestly. So yes, now would be my opinion.
Okay. Is there any other comments or concerns, I guess, from council on that point?
I will echo Alder Gray's sentiments on that. I think if determine what positions could fully function from a laptop at home, those people could easily work at home. And there's really no reason that, if you have to have interaction with, customers or city staff or whatever, like if you're a DPW working at the front desk, you really can't work from home. So whatever staff member could do all of their duties from home easily.
Kyle, could you share with me any of your concerns or issues with, I know that you guys did some of that back in the spring, had, most everybody working from home, and then it was kind of, I think people kind of trickled back. Is that how it worked? But I guess.
Yeah, sort of trickled back a little bit. So right now, Matt is on his laptop, on our laptop, dialing in. This might be laptop number 2 out of 2. So Matt will be able to work at home, and when we're not having meetings, we could send this home with someone, but we're ultimately really unequipped at all to be unattached to the office. We can let people use their private computers and dial in on VPN, but that's also got a lot of security risk to it, and is not really a recommended practice. So there are things we can do, and we can spend the money to get laptops and get them outfitted, but it's not going to be necessarily quick or easy. And a lot of the work that happens here is, accounting records and processing bills and things like that. Not always easy to just be at home and do it. And I still have some security concerns about, even with a VPN and accessing our accounting software in and out and banking records and moving sometimes millions of dollars around. That gives me great concern. I think there's things we can do, but I also think that one of the things I worry about is, say that DPW, that's not something that you can easily replicate from home. A lot of it's actual work that needs to be done. And if you're segregating the workforce to say that half are working one week, half working another, or alternating days, then the compensation for that can come into question if we're going to do that over 6 months or whenever the pandemic lightens up. And then if you have people that are working in the office for 40 hours, if you're not going to penalize people who are being sent home to be on call, that the people that are here working, are you paying them more, or is it all just the same? And there's a lot of issues that haven't come up here, but other communities have experienced them, and it just brings a lot of questions into play. And even if people are laid off from a local factory or a local commercial store or something like that, or a restaurant that's shut down, they're paying the taxes that are, if we're going to commit to this for 6 months, are ultimately being paid to people to not work at times. So it's not a simple decision, and it's not something that I take lightly, and I don't think you take lightly either. So if we want those changes now, I think we need to fully kind of understand the impact and then maybe determine how long we're committed to that and what it really means.
It's Trina Reed.
I guess at this point, I'm kind of with the first part of Ian's suggestion of having each department head kind of come up with, just to make sure that they have a plan of how they could either separate within the building or take turns at home, just so that we have something in case things get a bit worse for a bit.
Well, I mean, I think Kyle brings up all these excellent points. I guess my concern is that we can have a plan and it just falls by the wayside. I trust Kyle to make the appropriate decisions for the most part. I do have concerns when it comes to people in this building specifically working in very close quarters. But if the rest of council doesn't necessarily think we should implement something now, based on, just all of the things that Kyle just described of, who would we pay, who can work from home, or we're not equipped to work from home. If that's, if nobody wants to, I guess, platoon the workers as I suggested, but based on the facts that Kyle provided, that's fine too. I wanted to bring it up to council to have this discussion because it does concern me. So, and especially since it is election season, there are going to be people coming in and out for several weeks and coming through the building. I know that the last few elections, early voting has kind of been more popular. I don't know with mail-in voting if the turnout has been similar, but with the absentee ballots, but I know in the past that it has been very popular. So I guess I have that concern in just maintaining structure and being able to keep City Hall open throughout that time and keep our employees and community safe. So, Mayor Tom, did you?
Yeah, before we got onto this subject, when we kind of went away from the pavilion, there was one question I wanted to ask just to make sure that we have some clarity, I guess. I don't know that we really define the difference between, the weddings, the private events, that if we're okay renting that out to the 25% capacity, they have bad behavior or good behavior, we have no control over that. But what about public events? I think there's a difference between the two, and I think we need to draw that distinction at this time to give staff some direction, because if we're okay with the 25%, is that for everything, or is that just for a wedding? But I think we need to recognize the difference there. I personally don't feel like we should be having public events there. I think we're inviting people into a public building. We could have a supervisor there, or we could do whatever, but I still think we're providing an environment for people to congregate in, even if it's within a set amount of people, but 200 and some people in one building. To me, it just doesn't seem like we're really doing our due diligence to slow down, what's occurring. That's just my opinion.
I guess I was partially wondering if we have public events already listed for this winter?
Well, potential.
I think we have some potential ones. I think there's ones like a kind of Christmas vendor sort of event. And then the other one, Amy Jo would have to help me fill in the details, but I believe it's related to, Santa Claus and things like that.
Breakfast with Santa. And they have a very detailed plan.
I guess that's my concern, is how do you treat everyone? I mean, does the council want to review the plan for each potential event? What is the threshold on those. I just think there's a distinction between a public and a private event myself. The perception of what are we trying to prevent here by having an emergency order and going over all these things? And if, we can't control a private event, we certainly can control a public event.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. And yeah, if we can control the public space in order to mitigate everything, I'd be willing to shut down the public part of it. Obviously it stinks and nobody likes to be in this position, but at the same time, we'll get over it. It's just going to be a temporary thing, but for right now, let's close it down.
I don't like to be the bad guy, but so far we haven't had a 4th of July parade. Holiday train's not coming here. I doubt there's going to be a ceremony for the tree lighting. That's just kind of been what's been happening. That's the trend. I think people are used to it, but as we see the numbers exploding, how bad do we need to have a public event in the next couple of months? If this disappears in 2 months, hey, guess what? Let's throw that back on the books. But I think for a little bit of revenue coming from a rental at the pavilion, it doesn't offset the perception that we're creating, I think.
Ian?
I would be, honestly, shutting down public events is not desirable, but if we are not confident that we can adequately maintain 25% capacity at these events, then I would say they shouldn't go forward. I think either we should be comfortable that we can enforce them at 25% or less and social distancing, everyone wearing a mask, or they shouldn't happen.
Anybody else have any thoughts on public events? At the pavilion or elsewhere
My
throughout the
main
next?
concern is the pavilion because of the amount of people that, even 25% is several hundred people having I guess this is a public gathering we're having in here, and we've put precautions into place and have for months. The public is invited to come to a meeting, as we had 3 people come and speak this evening. We always want to try to control the amount of people we have in a room, but the pavilion is a very large venue. It's not popular having to say no to those things like the 4th of July, et cetera, but really, what are we trying to accomplish with all this? And I think we want the public to feel safe and do things safely, or we're begging them to because we can't enforce anything. So I think if you have no enforcement capability and you're having a public event, anybody can do whatever they want.
I certainly support not having any more public events, and unfortunately, I think we're really most of the year through this pandemic, and I think we're all really sick of being at home, and I think we all really want to be able to think about times when we're going to be able to gather again and feel safe, and unfortunately, that's not the case right now. So I think it is the responsible thing to do to not host any public events. So it makes me sad. And I know a lot of organizations work really hard to put on these events, but I don't feel that it's safe to resume either. So, Ian, you may go ahead.
I think the caveat, though, I don't want to completely cancel them. I want to ensure that they are properly done so that social distancing and the 25% rule is adhered to. I think if a public event comes across and they're willing to pay for whatever you want to call them, whether they're security guards or moderators or whomever that actually enforces the rules within their event, then we could look at allowing it to happen.
So who's going to verify that they're going to be enforcing that? I mean, I don't know. That's a
Sorry.
sticky wicket.
Well, if someone's going to rent the pavilion, they have to fill out an application, obviously, so there's some details that can be requested or required for an event. I'm not questioning that, but so what criteria, I guess, are we all going to agree upon now that Amy Jo can take an application and she can consider it? Does it have to come in front of the city council? I just think that it's a gray area. You know, you may have more control over a public event versus a private event, but we need to differentiate between the two, because I think we're endorsing one to a certain degree if it's a public event more than a private event where the renter has the responsibility of ensuring the safety of their guests at a private event.
I think it also gets complicated when you talk about food and drink, and unfortunately, it just gets really complicated, and it doesn't make me comfortable.
I think there's maybe certain circumstances, you know, fundraising, who wants to say, hey, you can't have a fundraiser this year because you're doing good things for the community and you're bringing some money in for a, you know, a local organization, which is noble, but, you know, we went through the pool this summer. You know, I think things went very safely there. It was a lot of extra work for staff, et cetera, but it was because it was chlorine water, you know, that convinced me that as long as the kids were in the pool and there was a limited number of people that we could do that. There were other communities that didn't go that far. So I think we've been trying to be creative and inventive to try to get through this year and allow for certain things to happen. But I think when it comes to public events, it's, you know, I think people are looking for something to do, but if you open it up to the public, unless you can control the exact amount of people that are in there and provide a plan, I think you're kind of opening yourself up for some problems.
I also think in general, just indoors sort of changes the game, and that's what, you know, it's, my concern is that over the next few months, as it gets colder and people are congregating more and more inside and potentially having events indoors in gatherings, that the issue could become completely out of control, not that it's not already. So I guess I'm sorry to say that I don't think we should have any more public events for the remainder of the year.
I am on board with that as well.
Yeah, I'm very sad that I'm also on board. Yeah, thinking probably nothing public through winter. That even if it's not that safe in the spring, at least we'll be able to have doors open and we'll be, you know, out of the regular flu season. There'll be a little less confusion and,
Am I out of line to ask if we can maybe hear from Amy Jo if she has any ideas on this, or? I mean, because we're saying we want to leave, you know, essentially decision-making to like the department heads, right? You know, come up with like a plan. I think this might be a great opportunity to see if there's any thing that she can shed light on that might sway your opinion. It might not, but.
Yeah, so if you have a specific question for Amy Jo, I think that's fine.
I don't have a specific question. I
okay.
thought maybe she'd just give her opinion on this, but that's all I'm asking. If I'm out of line, I'm out of line.
So if you're asking her for her opinion, yes, you may. Amy Jo, yes. I know.
Okay, hello. So I'm agreeing with what everybody is saying. The private event is a tricky situation, and I can honestly say that everybody who has reserved for their event, for their private event, have notified me that they scaled down quite a bit. So they're all under that 300 mark, which is good. We do have signs posted currently that's saying that masks are required. I can change the sign about the 25% capacity as well. I'll do that tomorrow. In regards to a public event, I guess I'm kind of on the fence with that. Katie brought up a good point about the food. For example, Breakfast with Santa, I know that they're filling out the supplemental information, and the way they have that set up is reservations only, and they cut it down to so many people for 20 minutes. So, you know, I don't know if maybe they come in and present their plan individually. I don't want to be a spokesperson for them. I just don't think that's fair because it might be information that I'm missing, but the only two public events would be the craft fair, and they have a good plan as well, and then the Breakfast with Santa. January, February don't have any rentals, which is probably a good thing for now with the cold weather. But yeah, it's tough. So I'm on the fence as well. But the plans that I did see for the craft fair, Breakfast with Santa, I am volunteering. I will be there for that event. But the craft fair will probably draw a lot of people in. And they're going to be, the top of my head, people will enter from downstairs, come on, and then exit through. And then they're going to count the number of people coming in, using a radio to say how many people walked out, so that they have a constant flow. That's what they say, so. I'm not much help. It's a tricky situation, but.
Thank you, Amy.
Any other questions?
None, thank you.
Ms. Trina Reed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards a no, but I'm on the fence. I guess I'm most concerned about the Breakfast with Santa with, even in small groupings, that would, you know, be kids, which might be doing a bit of vectoring, and they'll have their mask off, and food. So, yeah.
I guess for me, I'm curious if there would probably be enough time for them to organize a different venue at a private place or have a private event instead of a public event. If we, I guess I don't think that the city should be having public events. I don't think it's responsible, and it really stinks. But that's my position and that's my opinion.
I'm gonna come to that realization as well.
I apologize, I should have added, Breakfast with Santa is reservation only. You can't show up. So
Okay.
it's kind of like an invite only type thing. It's not,
Okay.
you can't show up that day. If you don't have a reservation, you're not allowed to go in. And they are not sitting on Santa's lap. I can present everything to Kyle, but tidbit there.
Okay. Oh, Ian, I'm sorry.
So if I may, so my biggest issue with all of this is honestly, the private events are likely to spread far more so than most public events. So putting an automatic box on public events versus private events doesn't really stand to reason in my mind. If we can take each public event on an individual basis, whether they're willing to police their numbers, make sure people are social distancing and keep it safe, that's still better than the private events. So I don't think we should put an automatic into the public events. We should just make sure they have a plan and that it is adhered to somehow. Like Amy Jo will be at the Breakfast with Santa, and you know, like perhaps we can get them to incorporate more people that, for lack of better terms, police the event and make sure that things happen appropriately. Because honestly, like going throughout the city in some of our businesses, you're more likely to come in contact with someone without wearing a mask in a far less distance from you that hasn't been for a long time than you are at one of these events. So it's a difficult thing for me to say we should just automatically say no to all of these things that could potentially be safer than going to a gas station.
What is the will of the council on this issue?
I know that this is a decision that should be made rather quickly here, but I'll be honest, I think we could sit here until 1 o'clock in the morning and not have a clear direction, so I think, I'd love to say we can come up with this and say, yep, here's the direction, Kyle, and move with it, but I don't think we're there yet. I think we have to move this forward, and I'm sorry.
Alder Adams?
Personally, I'm kind of, if it's a public event, it's almost like it's city sanctioned-ish, and I don't think we should be in a position where we're putting people, I don't want to say we're putting people at risk, but I don't want to promote anything that would cause or have a chance to spread the disease. I'm sorry, I'm really tired today. But I think I'd be willing to still stick with no public events.
Okay. Alder McCabe?
I guess considering there's only 2 events, I'm comfortable with if they have a really good game plan that they can come up with and present it. I'm okay with looking at that rather than just saying no public events, I guess.
I'm leaning towards no public events, but I'm on the fence.
I still stand by that the city should not promote gathering in the sense of having and holding public events. I guess that's my opinion. Whether or not Breakfast with Santa is considered a public event or a private event, I'm not sure. But what I do not want is, I guess, a bunch of families getting sick from that. That's what it comes down to, and that's it makes me very worried. Even in a huge, large space, people eating and drinking and sort of gathering, and if they're not sitting on Santa's lap, and then I don't see, I guess I don't understand a lot about that event, but it makes me nervous. So with that, I also just don't think that the city should be promoting something that may be unsafe or unhealthy for its residents. So, Mayor Tome.
I think you said, what my major concern is. It's the perception. Breakfast with Santa, something that happens every year. I don't think people really know who's sponsoring it unless you take your child to it or you dig into it. I guess my concern is the perception, and I've already heard from people in town about things that are happening at private weddings, and I tried to explain to them, they rent the building, it's a private event, here's the recommendations, here's the guidelines every human is supposed to follow. They didn't follow the recommendations, and they're asking me why we rented it out to them. That's kind of why we're having this conversation. It's the perception. It's in a public building, and we can't really do much to control that event. Maybe we can a bit more for a public event, but I think sponsoring something to invite the public to come out and have a large gathering to celebrate something is that we've had to say no to that all year long during the summer, and now we're coming into the winter. It's about the perception of what we're allowing people to do. That if everyone acted responsibly, we wouldn't need stop signs or an ordinance or a city council or state government, but we can clearly see that's not what's happening currently. That's my concern. That's why I think that city staff needs to have some direction on things that they can and cannot entertain at this point. There are other things that haven't gotten to the point of being planned where the city's not, or the school's not going to have homecoming, so guess what? Let's have it at the pavilion. Well, how does that, how are people going to perceive that? Who's the bad guy and who's the good guy? If the school's not going to have homecoming or prom, maybe the city will do it. We can't get involved in those types of things, and I think we're going to continue to be involved in those types of things. If someone's looking for a place to have a public event, here we have it, and if they're willing to pay the rent, we told them that this is what they're supposed to do. I just think it doesn't give a very good perception at this time with the health issues that we have. That's why I'm trying to get us to get some clarity and direction on this.
Thank you, Mayor Tome. I guess I just want to reiterate again, I mean, we canceled so many public events this year, and the numbers around us of, this virus spreading were far lower. And we claimed safety then. And to sit here and watch everything around us just spiking and, people closer and closer to all of us become infected and say we can make it safe doesn't seem responsible to me. So that's, Ian.
I 100% concur with that. My problem is that these things are safer than what we are doing on a day-to-day basis in many of our local businesses and things. We aren't enforcing anything. We aren't doing anything outside of these spaces. In these spaces, we could enforce and ensure that it's safe, but we're not doing anything about adhering to the state's order throughout Columbus. So, to me, it's kind of, it's a little hypocritical to cancel one thing, but do nothing about any of the things that affect all of our citizens on their day-to-day lives.
Ian, can I ask you a question? Are you inferring that the city should have a mask mandate?
I believe we should. I do believe that the state has mandated quite a few things that aren't followed here.
Oh, Attorney Johnson, could you give us your opinion on that?
On which part?
I guess Ian is that we should not be controlling of the pavilion if we can't have a citywide mask mandate on businesses, private businesses. I can't imagine how that's going to be enforceable.
Someone made the comment earlier that that the city isn't able to enforce a lot of these things. To a certain extent, that's true. Unless the city goes and creates the mechanism for enforcement. So far, a lot of these mask orders and a lot of the emergency orders are public health related. They aren't law enforcement related. And there isn't a penalty in your ordinance. There isn't a penalty in the statute. Well, there might be in the statute, but there's not a direct penalty, and I really don't think it's going to be a good use of resources to have the city police department issuing citations to people who aren't wearing masks. So enforcement is very difficult. It truly is. If your idea of enforcement is shutting down an event for rampant non-use of masks, that's a little bit different. But they just tell people to go home. So I think it depends on what you define as enforcement as to what you are going to, as to whether or not you think you can enforce any of this.
I guess my point is that if we can control whether or not we rent the pavilion out to the public, we can do that. But having a mask mandate, I think we'll have a lawsuit or the threat of a lawsuit practically every day of the week, trying to tell private businesses that they need to turn people away at their front door because they're not complying.
That's already in place.
Yeah.
The mask mandate's already in place.
And that's exactly what I was saying. It's already there. We're not following it.
We're not enforcing it.
It's really difficult to enforce. That's been the problem with the mask mandate since day one. It's not a law enforcement situation.
Correct. And if the district attorney is not going to prosecute any of those charges, essentially we're just keeping the local police busy by handing out citations that won't go anywhere, won't do anything. I just think it's a completely separate conversation from what we're trying to get through here concerning cities.
It's a completely different conversation.
Okay, we're gonna try to move on here after, I'm gonna try to get the temperature of everybody and where you're at. Do you think, I'm gonna kind of just go around here. Just let me know briefly if you are for having public events or holding public events or not. Starting with Adams.
I believe we should not have public events.
Reed.
I'm a lukewarm no. We should not.
Mayor Tom.
I'm okay with canceling public events.
And Ian.
I mean, I'm okay with canceling them, I don't like that. I think it is the smallest portion of risk of anything out there, but that's beside the point, I guess.
Yes. Okay, I am okay with canceling, so thank you. And we are gonna move on. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mayor Tom.
The survey that was sent out by Kyle.
Oh,
I believe
yes.
We got 4 responses. Is that all, Kyle?
Yeah. I just checked just before the regular meeting. I've only received 4 responses. It's anonymous to the council member, so I don't know who responded and who didn't as far as the, most everyone in this room, except for maybe Pat, isn't even aware of the survey. But essentially, it was a survey to question what type of meeting format you preferred, ranging from virtual to a semi-virtual, so virtual with nobody here, semi-virtual with just maybe the chairs of the committee or commission or board or council, and then certain necessary staff. The third option being more like we're having right now, where some staff and some of the members of the governing body are attending if they want remotely, and others can be in place. And then the fourth option being, forget virtual, we're going 100% in person. And I didn't have any responses wanting to go all virtual. I didn't have any responses wanting to go all in person, and I had 2 votes on either of the other options. I did also ask about if you had the technology and internet access to make that happen if we did go all virtual, and everyone that responded said they did have the capability to do that if we needed to.
Okay, thank you. So if you have not yet taken the survey, please do. I think just the information for Kyle will be good. I guess I wanted to just have a discussion about this, just because should the need arise, we should have the capability of going all virtual, or like hopefully we should be thinking about these things, and we should assume that it could happen, that we're going to need to have an all virtual meeting. And I know that I've participated via Zoom a time or two. I know that Adams has as well. Ian does often as well. But not everybody has. So kind of see where everybody's at with the technology and being able to do that. But also maybe putting together a plan. I guess I know that when I've participated via Zoom, it is a little bit more difficult. And I think that that's kind of the perception that's been gathered, and that it's easier to participate in person. And I think what we should do is try to figure out a way that it makes it a little bit easier to participate via Zoom, and so that we feel like we can actually participate in the discussion. And what that all involves, I'm not sure. I know that Ian, in the past, you suggested that, you know, if it was just the mayor and I in council chambers, and we had each had our own Zoom feed, so it's just, you can see who's talking instead of just like a panorama of the room or something along those lines. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up and see, you know, if we could figure something out to have sort of a backup plan if we couldn't meet in person, and to also make sure that our meetings are, you know, useful. And usable in the virtual sense too. So, Mayor Tom.
My concern and why we wanted to get some clarification on this is it may be, you know, inconvenient or not as desirable to participate via Zoom, and I've done that for some committee meetings. But, you know, part of the reason that last week was postponed, I wasn't feeling well. if I can't come in here and chair the meeting from this spot, I have an internet at home with 2 kids and a wife with an office space. And if I can find a corner with good enough Wi-Fi, if I'm having technology concerns at home, I've got a 10-year-old Chromebook and I've got a phone I might be able to cobble together, but I don't feel incredibly confident in getting put into that situation where I can't come in here and chair the meeting if I'm trying to do it remotely. The same goes for Katie. So I think that's why we're trying to get some idea from the council of what they would or would not absolutely not be comfortable with, because I feel like it would be very difficult for me to chair a meeting via Zoom unless everything was taken out of this room and everything went full Zoom. Then we have to look at the possibility of broadcasting. You know, how do we broadcast this through the cable channel without physically being in the room? But it opens up a lot of different conversations that I think we need to have some idea from the council on. So if you can at least take that survey to let us know what you're comfortable with and not, that will help, I think, start that conversation. So.
Okay. All right, finally, number 8. Review and discuss Dodge County stray animal contract.
All right, so this is a routine thing that we go through pretty much every year. The request is to stay exactly as it is in this year's budget, with choosing the lump sum of $1,100 that would cover a predetermined number of stray animals. It's already in the budget, and so I think the request was to stay as is, so that would be the suggestion.
Yeah. Trina Reed?
Yeah, I believe we usually went with the lump sum of 1,900 for up to 10 animals.
We did 5 last year.
Yep.
Did we make it smaller last year?
Because the average,
Okay.
we never got that close.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks like the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The one thing I noticed was this year they took away the dogs only and mentioned how they'll take all animals, but you can check mark that pre-approval is needed. So we could still give some parameters, so that, you know, a litter of a dozen can't be, you know, dropped off.
Sure.
So for clarification, we'd be checking off the first box. Humane Society must have approval before accepting any animal, correct?
That's what we'd be looking for guidance on, which way you'd like that, and then the contract level, which is the $1,100.
I'm certainly okay with the $1,100 based on the previous years. And then also the fact is that if they go over that, it also says that it's $250 per additional animal, which we could also suggest for pre-approval on. So I'm comfortable moving forward with just the 5, and each additional animal would then be $250 upon approval. The only time that we broke 5 in the last 5 years is 2016 at 6. So. Trina, go ahead.
I guess I would want to check the first one for must have pre-approval before any animal, just in case someone is trying to drop off
A litter.
5
Sure.
or 6 at once.
I would agree. Okay. Everybody okay to move that one forward? Okay. All right, so number 9, Dodge County Sheriff's 911 Joint Powers Agreement 2021. I'm going to pass that to Kyle too.
All right, and Dennis is also dialed in if there's any questions, but essentially this is kind of a routine thing that allows us to jointly work together with Dodge County and Columbus Police Department, and allows them some authority here and allows us some authority out there as well. And the agreement's in here. I think it's pretty standard and routine. I believe this is a 2-year contract that they're looking for in this one. Oh no, this one's just a 1 year.
Mayor Tolm.
We're expecting one of these from Columbia County as well then, correct?
It's my experience that every county that you regularly do this with, you would expect to have one, so I would anticipate that it'd be coming shortly.
Okay. If we happen, well, I guess we probably won't get that in the next week. I was just gonna say, if it showed up in the mail tomorrow, do we just throw it on the next agenda? Does anyone have any concerns about approving a joint powers agreement? Okay.
Is this something that other communities put on like a consent agenda or?
I've seen it on a consent agenda. It's typically not something that is very negotiable. It's pretty
Right.
standard, and it's one of those things that's sort of a rubber stamp, but does need official action.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be okay. I mean, just putting it on the next agenda. Okay. Number 10, review and discuss Columbia County Emergency Management Resolution. And let me see here. Evening, we have Amy Sandow here with us. Amy, you can come up, yep. It's the little talking face, if you want to.
Oh, got it.
There you go.
All right, so what this is, every 5 years, the city has to adopt the Columbia County Hazards Plan, or we can write our own. All right, it's really easier. I do attend the meetings that if we just adopt the Columbia County Hazard Plan. What this does is it opens us up for FEMA funding. Okay, without this plan, we would not get FEMA funding. Now, Jason was here, and I was hoping he would stay, but he didn't stay. With the gentlemen that were here talking about flooding, we do try to get grants, and this would allow us to get those grants. We have some cost-benefit analysis issues that a lot of times the things that I hope for are just a wish list, because they're not going to fall into FEMA's cost-benefit analysis. But if we do have like a 2008 flood, I think the residents got like $3,500. And it's really not even the cost to fix their furnace for their flood basement, but it is something. And also, all this is tied into the National Flood Insurance Program too. So, if we do just start to buy properties, we would have to have this signed. And it's every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this, I'll hand this to Kyle. That is what the resolution looks like. It's just really simple. I do hope you I know it's a really large document, but I did send the link to you in email. I really hope you do look at it because it does go over our vulnerabilities in Columbus. It's a little bit more than flooding. We have a couple of things going on. And I won't really talk about them here, but, it does highlight some things that really do need to be taken care of.
Mayor Tom.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because we didn't get we got like 5 or 6 pages, which is plenty for us with the sample resolution, but in the plan itself, on the back of the main page here, it says, adoption of this plan will not cost your community anything. You will not be committed to completing any of these projects listed. Instead, it is a list of triaged ideas that can be accomplished should the funding and will to complete them become available.
Yeah, there's no obligation to get anything.
But so there are projects that are identified within the boundaries of the city of Columbus
Yes.
that are tied to this county plan?
Yep.
Okay.
What happens, and we're kind of in an unfortunate situation where we're competing with Wisconsin River and I-90. So we're not going to get any of the access funds from Columbia County, but what FEMA gets from Columbia County. We're just not, because it's, I don't know if you've been on I-39, right past Portage, it gets flooded. That's kind of a big concern. The road to Cascade gets washed out. It could be washed out for 3 months after a flood. So that's the areas that money goes to. So if you're thinking that we're going to get money from Columbia County, probably not. Those areas are too. But in the cases of 2008 floods, our citizens will get a little bit of money to half the money to fix the furnace.
Okay. So I guess the specific, what you are asking for is we're okay with moving forward with this for the next 5 years, just as it is, and moving it forward to the next regular meeting. Does the council feel comfortable with that? Okay. All right, thank you, Amy. Okay, so we are already done number 11, so number 12 then is review and discuss Halloween safety recommendations. So, we have Amy Jo here this evening. And so basically in the memo, it just talks about parking. So it just talks about the city of Columbus implemented safety measure by placing no parking signs on Avalon Road on both sides, between Park Avenue and Brookside, where there's a lot of people crossing typically. And then they're just, they're asking also, another great option would be the upper part of Warner Street, from the top of the hill to Breverty Lane on both sides, also implementing no parking during Halloween. Did you have anything else kind of to comment on that, Amy Jo, or did you, that's pretty much it? Okay, okay. It's pretty straightforward, okay. I'm certainly okay with that. I think in areas that, especially areas like Warner Street that don't have, sidewalks on both sides, like the upper part of Warner Street, they don't have, or sidewalks in general, then you also get cars parked, so it kind of ends up being, there's also a park right there, so I think just on a day-to-day basis, it can be kind of shifty. But yeah, so I think I'm totally fine with implementing no parking during that one day. Paul Pfeiffer on?
Maybe I shouldn't even go there, but is this sort of on the topic that we were just talking about before, a public event that we're sort of encouraging a mass group of people to be congregating and walking up to houses?
So that's an excellent question, but I think what we have, I think if we're going to go there really quickly, I would just sum up the fact that Halloween, or specifically trick or treat is what I think you're referring to, is not a city-sponsored event. We do set hours for that. I think overall, anybody who wants to participate is going to participate. And again, we don't have any way of implementing any other, if we came out and said there's no trick or treat this year, we would have no way of stopping people from turning on their porch lights and passing out candy. So I guess that's what it comes down to. And I think a lot of people I've heard are getting very creative with the ways that they're going to be passing out candy this year. From what I've heard, I think everybody at least can mitigate or can, I guess, assess their own risks when it comes to that. But as far as trick or treating in general, the city doesn't do much aside from setting the time, and in this case, just moving some cars. That's
what about,
my
I'm
perception.
sorry.
Yep.
Should I wait?
Oh, I'll go real quick. I guess I feel a little more comfortable about allowing trick-or-treating to happen since it's an outdoor event, that people won't be in the same air for, at least a half hour. It seems like it should be just a lot safer than having something city sanctioned in an indoor building.
Which leads me to my next point. What about the trick-or-treating in the fire department? It's not happening? Okay.
Okay, Administrator Ellison.
Just to, touch on the Halloween thing as well. I think the hours provide some formality and some structure so that it's kind of a cohesive event, and it's not sporadic, and you have, kids running over, through the curbs and all that for 3-4 days at different times and, different days. But ultimately, I think what we're talking about is people using the public sidewalk to move about the community as they do every other day, and then enter private properties and, basically go get candy on private property, which is not something that we're really gonna most likely regulate. And then they get back on the sidewalk and move about the community. So, yeah, I think it's different than hosting it. If we wanted to bring the entire community into Fireman's Park, then I think it would be something we would have a lot more say over. But at this point, it's just kind of putting structure around something that's going to happen anyways.
Ian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything that's been said was my thoughts. Like, we can't really cancel trick or treating. We can't enforce people wearing masks inside of a building. We're not going to be able to enforce a mask cancellation of trick or treating, of course. But I mean, the studies have shown that the younger generation are the super spreaders. So I would very much caution anyone from participating in trick or treating because it could lead to a large outbreak. But again, there's not much we can do about it. So we should make it as safe as possible and do what we can.
Okay, so how does everybody feel about the parking on Warner Street and Avalon Road during Halloween? Are we okay with suspending parking?
Yes.
Mayor Tome?
I have some concerns because we're taking action to, the city's participating in it now by limiting parking, which we normally wouldn't under regular circumstances. I know that we did close down the area in Avalon years prior because there was concerns with no sidewalks and kids darting between parked cars. I don't know what to predict this year because of COVID, if less people are going to participate or more. So I guess we need to err on the side of caution. The concern is that if other communities aren't doing trick or treating and they find out what our hours are we going to have an influx of people coming to our community to do that? So I guess I don't really have a problem with it, but to some degree we are sort of endorsing this by closing down parking that we
Sure.
normally wouldn't, so.
I understand that perception and that concern. I guess my other,
I don't want to punish the kids, it's not their fault.
it's not. I recently watched a news story the other day about, I think it was Beloit, right, did not set any trick-or-treating hours, and the city just said, no, sorry, we don't feel like it's a safe thing to do this year. And then, lo and behold, a bunch of residents decided they were going to hold their own trick-or-treat, and they figured out their own hours. This is not something we can control. I think is if it's going to go on anyways, we already set the hours months ago. The least we could do is try to make it a little safer, regardless of, the virus and things like that. Just the physical safety and pedestrian safety, I think, is still necessary. So just to be cautious. So.
And just one quick comment. Does anyone know if the chamber did set up a trick-or-treating area somewhere outside of the fire department this year?
I don't have an answer for that.
I know they were trying to find a venue. Does anyone know if they did?
Dennis?
I think this is Matt. I think they at Columbus Family Restaurant was going to use it their parking lot for a drive-through, like safe trick or treating.
Okay.
I could follow up on that, but I'm not sure if that got approved or not.
Matt, that is correct. They reached out to me.
Okay. So they reached out, I'm sorry, Dennis, your microphone was kind of quiet there, but you said they reached out to you?
Yes, I was contacted by the chamber last week and made aware that they were doing this at Columbus Restaurant and what the plan was for that. It doesn't require any action on the city's behalf.
Okay.
Just wanted to let us know that they were going to do a cars down commercial.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Does that answer your question, Ian? I guess that's,
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have to be, a drive-through is probably the safest and best alternative, so.
okay, everybody okay with the parking situation then? Okay. All right, we'll move on. Okay, review and discuss, accept donation towards fence capping at Kiwanis Park. So we have the Kiwanis Group of Columbus wants to donate $3,000 to the city for a specific purpose of purchasing yellow fence capping on diamonds 4, 5, and 6 in Kiwanis Park. So it looks like the lowest bid of the project was $5,358 with American Fence Company. And the remaining, so the $3,000 would be covered then by the Kiwanis. And the suggestion is then to have, these are, I assume, budget lines in the memo. The rest of the money would come from recreation with the budget line for $958 and from the DPW for a total of $1,400. So you can review, there are, there's 2 bids and an email bid kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, I guess, Amy Jo, if you could come up here, I do have a couple questions. I don't know if the rest of the council does. Hello. Okay. So I just had a question about, so we've got American here, we've got the email one here, it looks like higher custom fence. And then is the following one Century Fence. I happen to notice that in the Century Fence one, it says D1, D2, D3.
Right, that they didn't have time to submit another quote. That was their original quote to us. We
Okay.
did tell them the dimensions of 4, 5, and 6, and they kept their price the same. That is a
Okay.
bit confusing, so
Okay, yeah,
apologize
because
for
I
that.
was thinking if it's linear feet, then this is smaller, so they're probably gonna be more expensive
Yeah.
anyways, but I just wanted to.
Price per square foot was what's on there, so.
Okay. And then additionally, it says terms net 10 days on this contract?
net
I know
30.
that, net
Yep.
30? Okay. Okay, just wanted to double check that, because
Good
I'm like, oh no, we
questions.
canceled our last meeting, and, okay, that concludes my questions,
Yeah,
I
we haven't
guess.
purchased anything yet. We're waiting for if Kiwanis, see if we would accept the donation.
And so the DPW is the $1,400, is that just directly related to labor? Or, the labor is from, so I guess how is DPW kind of
So
tied into this?
the way everything is laid out is that anything that's within the park is actually a DPW expense.
Okay,
If it's a program that I run in the park, like soccer, I purchase the soccer nets within the park.
okay,
So I had some money left over my budget. This was kind of an unexpected gift from Kiwanis, so I donated the $948, and then DPW donated the $1,400 because they had a lot of different cuts that they had to make this year to try to make some things happen. So I
Okay.
just expended that amount from my account.
that makes sense. I think when most people think of recreation, they think parks and recreation, but that's not
Yeah.
really how we're set up here.
Yeah, and actually, we made those changes in the 2020 budget. We moved everything over to the park for DPW.
Okay,
So-
okay, interesting, all right. Perfect. Is everybody okay? How do you feel about the caps on the fences and the donation that we're getting, Trina?
Oh, question on the caps. Is this the stuff that comes in maybe like 5-foot long segments and you kind of just clip it on top of the fence?
You'll see it similar down at Meister Park, because Kiwanis did donate some funds with that, along with the CSA. It protects the ball players if their arm goes over the fence, they don't get cut from the ridges.
Oh, okay.
But it's just a continual spiral capping that goes along. So,
Is it the kind that kind of looks like a, I don't want to make it sound cheap or whatever, but it kind of looks like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a, not, I want to. Yeah, it's like plastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is very sturdy, but I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, but yes, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, like a downspout, extra.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of where my mind goes, but yes, they cap that. But
Yep.
it is for safety purposes, I think it's, and it's,
It's a smart thing to have.
it is.
And then I know that the CBO is actually taking care of Diamond One on their own
Okay,
as well, so we'll have most of the
Nice.
diamonds done this year,
nice, okay, good.
so.
See a lot of nods.
Any other questions?
Wait until the mayor arrives here and.
I'm good.
Okay, he's good, all right. Okay, that sounds great, Amy Jo. Thank you, Kiwanis Park. Okay, so now we got number 14, review and discuss Fireman's Park Ball Field with Columbus School District. This, in your packet, I'm gonna give this to Administrator Ellison, and then I believe Matt might chime in as well.
Yeah, so just to start it off, kind of recap a little bit of the history here. I think Zach had been here a couple times, talking just in general about this concept. So apparently last year, Zach was approached by the school district about the possibility of the school district taking control of the ball field in particular, because they tend to be a higher user of it. And so according to Zach, he spent kind of that year looking at how the actual use went and the maintenance costs we had into it, and essentially observed that the school was a far greater user of that space than we were. And so his recommendation, with the low amount of revenue and the high amount of, basically maintenance and also aging equipment, the lights at the time they need to be replaced are probably going to be in the hundreds of thousands cost category for field lights. And I don't know how old those ones are, but they appear to be, aging. So the recommendation at the time was to have a conversation with the school just about what that would look like if they, gain control of the field. Would that be a lease? Would it be a sale? That kind of thing. And so we had a couple conversations over time with the school district and talked about, sort of how that would work. I think our initial preference had been a lease because it's a little simpler. It allows you to be a little bit more creative, and it's less permanent. And so ultimately what happened is the school really wasn't comfortable with that. I think they had indicated that, gosh, if we're going to put in a bunch of improvements, if we're going to put in a turf field, and then the city comes back and takes it back, we're out all that money, and they didn't feel comfortable with that. They preferred a sale. So we kind of walked down the path of what it would look like to actually sell the baseball field to the school. And we came up with a variety of protections that we would like to institute if that was something that the council wanted to move forward on. Things related to the shared use agreement and ensuring that if it ever stopped being a baseball field and football field, that the city would be obliged to, or the school would be obliged to the city then to make similar facilities available elsewhere. And there ended up being, I think, 12 different items in there. And I know the school has seen these, but not maybe made official comments, but they did have some questions more recently about it. And Matt might be able to update us, or Paul potentially. But, I think this initial plan that was drawn out in this sort of red baseball field, that was something that was developed by the Public Works Director, and it really reflects the actual field. I think as we've gotten further along now, there's maybe more questions from the school about, well, is it just the field, or how about everything, maybe to the east or something like that? And that's not something we've really talked about or entertained before this. So, I think at this point, I'd like to get some feedback on, if the city is interested in continuing the conversation about it, if they're comfortable with the addendum, or if they want more or less things in the addendum. And, I guess if there's any other ideas about how to proceed forward, if at all.
Don't all jump in at once. I know that there's a lot of information here. That's an excellent point. I kind of wondered that myself, though, about, that they brought up the area, I guess in this picture would be to the right. I think is what they're inquiring of, because that, if you see all the way to the right and bottom portion of this, is this high school parking lot, correct?
Yes.
So they would walk across the city's field potentially, or this, yeah, the city's own land just to get to the land. I don't know how I feel about that, but, I know that,
Do they become school property? There's a lot of other things, I think, with the stormwater easements and things by the pool of what that parcel would look like as well. But again, I think that defining an area and having a lease agreement to me seems like it would just be easier to do and less expensive.
yeah, I mean, I understand that part of it too. I do understand their part of not wanting to make expensive updates and then not own that piece of property. I guess I can see both sides of that coin. Administrator Kyle?
So just as a clarification, the blue line on the map, I believe represents the current parcel. The red lines, which actually cross over the parcel lines in some areas, represent the kind of bounds of the field. And so the red area, I believe, is what Zach developed as, if you want the field, this gives you the field. So that's, the red area is kind of what's proposed, I guess.
Trina?
Yeah, much like the mayor, I'm really interested in looking at some long-term lease language to take a step back and see if that might make more sense for the city.
Mayor Tom, did you have more further comments?
I think is to the concern of the school district or even the youth sports groups that donate a lot of things for the fields down there. If there's paranoia, I guess, or mistrust in moving forward in that fashion, right now there's just a shared use facility. I mean, they're all turning into donations and they're turning into city property ultimately. So I guess if there was some concern about that, the city's always had the ability to say, hey, guess what, we're going to build an airport there and we need you to move out and you don't have a football field. The city's always had the right to do that. We've never done that. I think having lease language allows both parties to formalize the relationship for the long term for its obvious use, which is athletic fields. With the approval of the referenda, I don't think anybody could predict where a new high school could be in 5, 10, or 20 years. So I think having a lease probably just makes more sense at this point rather than going through and breaking off a parcel. And I just can't see the city ever deciding that they're going to change that. They're going to really upset a lot of people that have put a lot of time and effort into, the scoreboards, the bleachers, and all the amenities that have helped build an athletic park. So I get their concern, but I think that concern was really always there.
Alder Piper.
Could we, I agree with the lease aspect as well, but could there be lease language saying, like, if the school district were to replace lights at a cost of, to use your number, $100,000, and they put turf in at the cost of $50,000, and then we say, okay, we want the land back, and then they're worried about not being, not recouping their costs, so we put like, that we would account for, I guess, depreciation on those goods, but we would give them, let's say, 75% of, or 65%, or make up a number, say, to offset the costs that you have improved this field, so you're not like totally out the money, but, and it's only like if we're gonna quote unquote steal the land back.
I'm not an attorney, but the city has one, and I'm sure that we can incorporate a language in there to reflect some of that if the school is concerned about investments that are put onto a piece of property that is leased, I guess, that's not really my concern. You know, I think anything is possible in lease language. But again, what would the city be doing? Are we gonna start a AAA baseball team and say, hey, we don't have time for high school kids anymore? We're starting a semi-pro team through the city and we don't have room for you here? It's pretty obvious what the use for that property has been for forever. I think Attorney Johnson had said when we first started that if we start looking through the documents or whatever's left at the county, was this granted to the city for specific uses or under certain conditions? What is the city going to do with the parcel of land that's a football field that's located between a golf course and a pool and a school? You know, maybe it's just having that language in there to make sure that give some reassurance to the school that it is going to continue to serve its current purpose and would not couldn't be changed.
I'm so neutral, I'm like Switzerland right now. I feel like I don't understand what benefit the field is giving us right now, other than further maintenance. I don't understand, I mean, if we're using it very rarely, I don't see why we advocate to keep it. I don't know. I'm not sure. Ian?
So I 100% understand the mayor's stance on wanting a lease over a purchase.
Okay.
And eventually that does protect us a lot better than a purchase would. But in this scenario, I think as long as we redrafted the purchase agreement in order to protect the city, and we had fail-safes in order to allow us to purchase it back at each integral moment that could potentially happen, and we had a shared use agreement that was in the benefit to the city, it would release liability, it would release cost, it would release maintenance, it would save us money to sell it. So I'm not opposed to selling it, I just think we need a better purchase agreement than we have currently.
Oh, sorry, everyone.
I don't know who was first, Trina.
Oh, I guess one of my hangups per se for selling is just looking at the boundary line, and the blue parcel doesn't seem to really work at all. It doesn't even include all of what we consider
The blue is not, again, it's not what we're proposing, it's the red that's being proposed, which could change too. So we could change, these lines essentially mean nothing, this is just what's been proposed. Is that correct, Kyle? Is that?
Yeah, I believe the blue represents the actual lines. I mean, it's, you, as you walk through the park, you don't know you're crossing a property line or a parcel line, but you do. And so the blue line is, I believe, the parcel line from the county, and then the red lines are the actual field boundaries, and the red lines are what the original agreement, as we started talking about with Zach and the school district, the original agreement was they wanted the field, the red represented the field as Zach drew it, and so that's what we were contemplating, but I believe the school has additional questions potentially about, we were gonna give them an easement so that they didn't have to worry about getting to their field and not having the right, because it's basically a isolated lot. And they asked more questions about, well, what about, why can't we have all the area to the east? And that's something we hadn't contemplated before, but to simplify it for right now tonight, all we were planning on talking about was the red line baseball field. Football field.
Combo.
Yes.
This is more Ian's bailiwick, and I don't know much about leases. But if we were to add everything that Ian wanted to the contract, would that alleviate some of your concerns, Mr. Mayor? Or would you still prefer a lease if, even if we had all that?
We haven't really heard back, I guess I haven't heard any details or back and forth from the school on where they are about this, and this is already, we started this conversation, quite a few meetings ago. So I guess I don't know what the opposition from the school side of this really is I can understand their concern. My major concern is that the city has owned the current football field and baseball diamond for, well, since before the school. That gives us some leverage in a shared use facility agreement. Without having the football field and other things, we need to have language that at least gives us both equal footing. If we don't have the equal footing going into this, 10 years down the road with different people here, I don't think the city has much bargaining power as far as gym space or other things available that the city wants, that needs to use for recreation programs. We don't own a gymnasium. The school does. And I think, when you get into the minutia of the shared use facilities agreement, that can get quite confusing when you start considering there's the city, there's the school, and then there's other youth sports organizations that use both of those shared uses, whether it's a city field or it's a school gymnasium. So I guess my concern is that if we're gonna jump off the ledge, let's at least make sure that we at least are as equally represented as the school, because I think that we are giving a large part of leverage away if we do it that way. I think a lease is always something that can be changed, that can be worked on between different parties, but I think just handing the deed over, the title to a piece of property with an addendum on it, you do it once and you hope you get it right.
Yeah, so I think at this point, it's more, we can see if we can get that language in there for the protection and see what the school district says. But it sounds like we might be at like an impasse for now, and if they don't want to go for a lease, and if they don't want to add those protections in there, then I think we're kind of stuck, if that's what I'm understanding.
We just haven't heard much, there hasn't been a lot of back and forth, I guess, that I've heard as far as the details of why they do like this or why they don't like that. I think we can continue to work on it, and I mean, right now with no sports really happening on the school level, and that was something I'd brought up when this conversation first started too, was I think this year was kind of a strange lesson, and it did matter who owned what piece of property, because I know with the school not having certain activities available, there were a lot of people calling the city from outside of the state looking to rent athletic fields that, lived in a place where they couldn't do any of that stuff. Dane County is a great example. They couldn't practice on fields, they were closed, so they were going to other counties or municipalities looking for that space. My son, who was in soccer, they didn't have soccer, but there were kids that were meeting at the city park to unofficially practice. They could not legally do that on the school grounds. Those are all just small things that maybe you need to address in a lease agreement if you get to a certain point, but who could have predicted COVID, right? So, yeah. The one last thing I wanted to mention, which was weird and is pointed out in here, is that the light controls are in the rest haven for the stadium lights. So I guess if we transfer that, is there a power bill that goes along with it or not? I don't know if there's a meter that's on the rest haven or whether it's metered at all, but that brings up another concern where if,
So are we paying their electric bills for football games already, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
And
Ian?
I think that's a big concern, and that's something, if we do sell it, we should give them a very specific amount of time to relocate the controls so that they do not have to access a city building in order to utilize them, and the power should be charged to them. I don't think it's possible to do that now. So part of the purchase agreement should include language of that nature if we do so.
Sure. I guess I'd like to just mention that I'm not against leasing or the lease option. I don't know that it sounded like that earlier, but I'm not against it. I guess in hearing the mayor speak about it, I do have concerns. At what point, 25 years from now, is anybody on the city gonna even remember that there are all these stipulations to when they sign, or when the school district, when or if they sell that land? And, you know, is it gonna hold any weight? I don't know. I think that those kinds of things happen all the time where it's like, oops, sorry, we already sold it and, we forgot. Sorry. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to the lease option either. I don't know that they're gonna go for it. But I guess if they don't go for it, they don't go for it. I don't know what else to say, but, yeah, so if that's the will of the council, I just didn't wanna, I'm, like I said, I'm pretty neutral on this whole issue, but, yeah.
I mean, a lease option is a lot easier and a lot cleaner and better for the city. If that's not what they want, though, we can create a purchase contract that benefits the city as well. We can go either direction. We can protect ourselves just as much in a purchase contract as we can in a lease. So if they want to, if the school is very much for a purchase as opposed to a lease, that doesn't mean we can't protect ourselves the same way.
Go ahead, Mayor Tony.
I agree with Ian. I think we're gonna need to hear from them what their response is to, I guess, this conversation, our concerns. You know, things like the power bill, I think Ian hit the nail on the head. If we did transfer that title over and something happened to the rest haven or to the head end, I guess, where the electrical wires meet up and there is no power to the scoreboard, they're gonna be yelling at the city saying, you know, you need to fix this, when it shouldn't actually be on our property or in our building anymore. And I think if those things can't get done, you know, conveniently now, or there's not a budgeted amount for it, that's where at least we can spell it right out to say, here, we'll agree to do this for this long. If it ever transfers, to you, you're going to have to change that within a certain amount of time. I just think with the timing of all this stuff right now, I don't see that there needs to be a rush when it's been this way forever. I think if we do a lease or we do a title transfer, it's probably better for both parties ultimately, savings, et cetera. But it's just got to be done the right way. I just don't want to do it in a hurry.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we have to hurry at all.
Why not celebrate a good partnership, I guess, with the school? I think we need to work with them, but there just hasn't been a lot of back and forth communication, understanding how we can kind of refine this whole project to meet their needs and also to meet ours.
Okay. So, we need just more communication. All right. We'll see that one back. Number 15, as review and discuss CDBG close participation plan. Matt, you are up for this one, please.
In your packets, you'll have a memo that I wrote, as well as the draft resolution and draft citizen participation plan. These two items need to be adopted as part of the CDBG close application. These documents were basically provided to me by DOA, and I went in and filled in the blanks to have these draft documents. I have spoken with DOA. They've indicated that you can use an committee. I recommended in the memo that the Plan Commission be the most likely committee that would be able to handle the duties for the Citizen Participation Committee. Also spoke with DOA about some of the projects that we identified. They have responded that the Second Ward Creek project is a project that they basically encourage. The survey is out to citizens in that area, and I'm working through this survey for the second area after a conversation with them on the Fuller Street project. So really, the participation plan is going to be supporting the projects that we're going to be completing in the upcoming months and years. So these are standard, I guess, forms and templates that I filled in to say City of Columbus. And as I said, this needs to be approved as part of our grant application for these CDBG closed dollars. Any questions on the participation plan or the resolution?
Matt, you broke up a little bit, but did I hear you say that the DOA confirmed that the Plan Commission could serve as the citizen participation group?
Yes.
Okay.
An existing commission or committee can serve as the CDBG Citizen Participation Committee. I think Plan Commission probably works best. And that's based off my conversations with DOA, trying to figure out how to meet the requirements for this committee.
This is a really weird question, but I'll blame a different level of government, but it says the City of Columbus shall establish a committee composed of persons representative of the City of Columbus demographics. I can see the Plan Commission. The committee must include at least one LMI person. I mean, how do you really determine that? We're going to ask for W-2 or, I mean, how do you prove that? Or do you
That's so weird.
really need to prove it?
In my conversation with DOA, if we have somebody that's also considered limited clientele, whether it's a senior citizen, that qualifies. So that was kind of my thinking. Instead of doing a survey, I think based on that definition from DOA, I think we'd be fine with the Plan Commission. So that's why I recommend the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
That was the only concern I had.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch that. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I don't have any concerns with this. I think I'm okay with moving it forward. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns for Matt at this time? Okay. So, all right, Matt, thanks. I think we got a plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is number 16, health insurance and benefit approvals for 2021. Woo! 0% increase. Originally 1.9% increase. Kyle, tell us about your negotiating skills real quick here.
I didn't do anything. This
Okay.
is partially our experience rating and things like that. I think they want to remain competitive. But it is exciting when you talk about health insurance to see something in the 0% range. So really, I think the question before the council this evening is really, will you authorize the continuing of the health insurance options, and that being two different options, one being the high deductible plan and the other being the more traditional HMO. Then also, as part of the high deductible plan, the city makes contributions for certain plans in the amount of $2,000 for the family or the employee and spouse or the employee and children, and then $1,000 for single coverage. And then also to authorize the rate split between the two options, with it being 88% city contribution to the lowest cost for the high deductible plan, and 85% of the lowest cost for the traditional plan. I think I alluded to in some of the conversations that we've probably had, but that the city may wish to, at a future time, evaluate the sort of standardizing the contribution rate between 85 and 88, and just picking one rate and choosing that low-cost option and then basing the city contribution off of that. But I think that's something you want to talk about in spring, and you want to roll out over summer and have people have a lot of time to make that kind of decision on what's right for them. But just to know that I think that's a good conversation to have moving forward, because there is a significant difference in cost to the employer depending on which plan you choose. So I think it's a good conversation, but ultimately I think we're really faced with a good option here of continuing our current offerings without significant or any impact to the cost.
Woo! You missed my excitement speech. Any questions or concerns for Kyle about the health insurance renewal plan? Mayor Tom?
Good news, I guess, 0%. My question is, I guess, do we need to move this forward for action, or is this just going to be part of the budget approval?
So it's really both. We do need an actual approval by the council, but it's, these costs have already been incorporated in the budget. So if you wanted to do something different, it would still have to be supported by the budget, but we definitely need to take action next Tuesday to approve this.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is everybody okay moving forward? Okay. All right. Okay, number 17, review and discuss Columbus area EMS. And I've got Kyle here again for that. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Kyle put in a ton of work into this, and I read through it and I was just kind of blown away how much time, I think, and time and energy and maybe some well-being was sacrificed in all of this. So I think it just needs to be said that we should be very, very grateful for all of the information in front of us this evening and how it's all broken down. So, yeah. Yeah, so essentially, we got some of the stuff we wanted and some we didn't, but.
Yeah, I think that's really where it breaks down. I think there was legitimate items in there that I would have liked to have seen be adopted, that would have made a stronger contract for the group, and then by default, the city as the current majority member of the group. But I felt like there was enough positive changes, and being a kind of necessary service, and you know how well it historically I think it has worked. You know, I think we're in a position where it just makes sense to move forward and continue to evaluate the results. I did get notification that the contract as it's presented now, the contract itself is not changing from what you see. Appendix B, I think it is, that details the municipal boundaries of all the joint members, was incorrect. I don't think it impacted the city of Columbus at all. I think it was most likely one of the rural communities that had to make sure each section was kind of included on the territory. But if it's moved forward for approval, we'll make sure we have that in advance of the approval.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there's not a lot we can actually do at this point as far as like getting the rest of the changes that we want, but I think that we're moving in the right direction, and I would hope that you also kind of just opened some eyes and maybe some ears as well in the process, and I just really thank you for doing that. Does anybody have any questions for Kyle on the contract or the recommendations, or?
No, just thanks, Kyle, for all the work. I know that this was a lot of work attending the meetings and negotiating on things, and you made a big difference. I appreciate your effort.
And a lot of problems I think that we wouldn't even known existed, or in other, maybe other municipalities as well. So I think, yeah, great effort. Yeah, okay. So that's it. We're gonna move forward. All right. 18 is review and discuss RFP for building inspections. So I have Kyle again.
You sound disappointed, but
I didn't mean to be disappointed. Sorry.
So yes, so this is a follow-up from one of our previous meetings where in order to kind of test the waters and ensure we're getting the best quality service for the community, there was a desire to go to an RFP process, and we did have to notify them prior to October 1st of that change, and we did that, and they received it. So now comes the part where we need to figure out what's next. And so I have a draft request for proposals. I believe this one was drafted from, I think Door County was the basis for it. And so I think I have, between Matt and myself, we kind of went through and made it customized to Columbus. And so we thought it was a good start. But I think at this point, we'd be looking for, if it's what you're expecting, if the timeline looks right, if the format looks right, and basically anything you would like us to change prior to presenting it back next Tuesday, hopefully, for adoption so we can get going, because December 31st will come rapidly.
Personally, I'm very impressed with what you came up with in that amount of time, and everything that I've read through looks perfect.
Mayor Tom, sorry.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you were able to put this together this quickly as well. I like the very specific things about the community. I think that's what we need to let people know who are bidding on, as far as, how the zoning administrator falls into this, et cetera. And also, the changes we've made in recent years to allow, building inspection services to work, do inspections on those, 50,000 cubic feet alterations affecting not more than 100,000 cubic feet. That's all new stuff, and I'm glad that it was very specific to the community. I have no problems with it. I think we need to keep things rolling so we can get through the process in a timely manner, obviously, before the end of the year.
See, all shaking heads in the right direction. Okay, good. Thank you, Kyle. All right. Okay, so I'm on, sorry, I'm a little confused here. Review. All right, yeah, number 19, review and discuss repurposing 2020 budget funds to outfit end loader for snow plowing. That time again. Okay. So is this you, Kyle? Sorry.
This is me.
Just because you're DPW right now. Okay.
As we were working through Zach's budget request, this came up in the capital expenditure request that he had, and it involved, since 2013, they took an old grader out of service, and instead of replacing it, they rented a tractor annually for $8,000 a year, and basically, we can take that, the loader that's there right now that is just a few years old, and outfit it with a plow and wing at a cost of about $40,000 and avoid that $8,000 a year tractor rental altogether. And so in 5 years, we'll be able to just, come break even in 5 years, and after that be a net surplus, basically. In this year, they already set aside $12,500 in that budget line, which wasn't nearly enough to accomplish it. And I'm not sure if the plan was to roll it over, but ultimately, working with Zach before he left, we were able to identify several lines that could potentially fund that in the 2020 budget allocation. Get the contract signed. There is a small increase. I don't know exactly what that is for that same setup after November. But this would allow us to do it this year. It's a month or so process to get it actually done. So if we can get this in November or December, we'll have it in the beginning of January, hopefully. If we wait till next year, we won't have it for a good chunk of the season unless we keep the tractor at that $8,000 rental and then do this in the off-season. So we thought it was an opportunity to avoid a future capital expense that would have to be in the budget anyways, and use current year money to see if we can get this done and avoid extra expenses that might not be necessary.
How long have we been renting an $8,000 tractor? Just out of
Since
curiosity.
2013, I believe.
Okay. Mayor Truum.
If I recall as well, it was a kind of a lease agreement, so even if we didn't need it, we still paid the same amount every year up to a certain amount of hours of use on that rental or lease?
So my understanding is historically, in the very first couple of years, I think it was like, oh, well, gosh, you guys didn't even use it that much. Tell you what, we'll give you a half back or something. And I think over time, that's kind of gone away, in that they have a capital expense that is locked up all year long, whether we're using it or not. And so to give discounts on something, they gotta make their money back too. So I think those discounts went away, and I believe it's just $8,000 a year if you want it, up to that amount. But there's no credit for underuse, I believe.
Okay. I think this is a good idea. I mean, I kind of know why we went to where we went, but I think that owning a piece of equipment, this would go on the new front-end loader that we bought last year, which is the medium-sized loader. It's not the big one, it's kind of the medium-sized one, from my understanding.
Yes, my understanding it's the new loader that we have.
Okay. On the budget, it looks like most of these things are coming from within the DPW, but the Fund 415, Equipment Replacement Fund, proceeds from the 2016 sale of surplus DPW equipment, is that different than the fund that we kind of have everything going into right now, or is that fund? The asset disposal fund, I guess, is what I'm thinking of.
So I believe it's the same fund, but I believe it may have, as I looked into it a little bit, as it was explained to me, it might have predated the current practice where all the money goes just into the general pot of money. This may have been at a time when if DPW sold it, that was DPW's money, and it might stay in the equipment replacement, but it was tagged with DPW. And so I think some of that money still has that tag to it. And so this would clear that out, and then, basically everything would be on the newer policy.
Okay, that was my question, whether it was cleaning that account out or not. The other one is contingency. Is that cleaning out contingency?
No, that does not clean out contingency. So if we used the contingency, it would leave about 33% of the original budget right now, or more than $21,000.
Okay.
So, in the next 90 days or whatever's left of the year, we would still have, a significant amount. And, even if a major expense happened at this point, I think we would have some flexibility here. But we're running out of days where anything major, we wouldn't even be paying with this contingency fund this year. So that window is kind of closing a little bit, but we would still have flexibility to pull elsewhere if needed.
Okay, and then the last question was on the quote. Freight is still to be determined. $39,950. I'm just curious how much it costs to, is that $50 or is that $8,000? I don't know. Just wondering if you figured a little contingency in the freight cost if we've got to come up with that too. So.
Yep, I don't have that information right now, but I can definitely have that for Tuesday if you're interested in moving it forward to the regular meeting.
Is this going somewhere to get installed on there? Are they shipping the blade here, or how does that part of it work?
Yeah, so it has to go away.
Okay.
But in the meantime, they will loan us a similar piece of equipment for our use.
Okay.
So it won't be outfitted with snow removal equipment, but it would have everything that it currently has right now.
Okay, great.
So when they talk about freight, does that freight include us getting our loader to them, or do we just put it on a flatbed and drive it up there? I don't know how that, I'm just curious.
So my understanding is I thought it was going to go to this Miller and Bradford more locally, but I think the actual equipment needs to be shipped to the actual place it's going to be installed, but that wouldn't be here on site.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure that we've covered all the other expenses like that as well. Maybe Miller Bradford is gonna bring in our loaner and they're gonna pick ours up and take it back and do all that. I just don't know, but I want to make sure that we've just got it all accounted for. I was surprised that a blade or a plow and a wing cost $40,000, but I get it. It snows in Wisconsin. Sometimes a lot, sometimes not much, but I think owning a piece of equipment rather than leasing it every year is probably smarter, so.
We could have owned one already. Ian?
So my first question is, for the equipment that we're leasing currently, what is that lease like? When does it end? Are we obligated to lease next year?
So I believe it ends on December 31st, and we would keep the tractor up until that point. I haven't seen the lease, but my understanding is if we notify them that we're not renewing, that we get out of it. It's a, kind of a local lease, but we can pull that up and have that available as well.
We should probably just double check that. Thank you, Ian. That's
Okay,
good.
and I just want to make sure we can get out of the lease prior to this, and we're not still leasing that piece of machinery next year because we did not get out of the lease in time. My other question is, I might be missing something, or I might not have noticed it, but where is all this money coming from within the DPW?
So, on the second page of the memo, there's the $12,500 from the snow and ice truck equipment rental line. That was specifically put in the budget for outfitting this. There's the $1,735 from the 2016 surplus DPW equipment. And then garage vehicle repair and maintenance has $5,000 that they think they'll have left over because they're just about done with all their regular vehicle maintenance and they haven't had any major hits. Streets and alley operating supplies and streets and alley painting. Most of the street and alley operating supplies and painting is done for the year, and this is the remaining balances that they have available as they're really out of patching and painting anymore. And then buildings and grounds repair and maintenance supplies is something where they've done their projects during the warm months and they know that this is what they'll have available. And contingency fund, we've been lucky that we haven't had to dip into that this year for anything major, so that's just kind of the general fund, contingency fund there.
The building grounds and maintenance fund that it's coming from, are those things that the council has approved and haven't actually been accomplished yet? Like, what exactly is that coming from?
So these would be operating supplies and maintenance supplies for DPW. So this would be something that would be operational expenses that the department head and the staff would be doing. It could be nails, could be caulking for windows, could be minor gutter repairs, things like that. So that would be kind of the type of thing you would find in that fund.
Okay, my big concern is, I know there are things that the council has approved to have happen that haven't happened through the DPW, like going back to the pavilion, the stairs were approved to be replaced and they haven't been. Are those funds still rolling over to get them replaced after the council approved to spend that money, or is this going into that?
This wouldn't be going into that. So this is, they have the account number in here, and I did send you a draft budget too. The stairs at the pavilion that are not being done, those funds Zach identified as being carried over so that the repairs could be accomplished next year in a combination of leftover money from this year and then new money allocation to fund that.
Okay, so it's not being drawn from things of that nature then?
No.
Okay, then that was my primary concern. But other than that, I just wanted to make sure that the lease, we are able to get out of it and we're not still going to be leasing, because I don't think we should spend any money now unless we know we can be out of the lease. If we still have to lease the vehicle for another year because we didn't cancel the contract in time, we should not be acting on this now.
Agreed. Thank you, Ian. Any other concerns for Kyle on this item here? No? Okay. All right, we're gonna move forward. So Kyle, you passed out the budget this evening. What's the plan for this?
So I was just gonna do some brief comments on it. I suspected that this meeting was gonna take a relatively long time, and we had a lot of items to go over, so I didn't want to go into length at something that's kind of its own animal, sort of. So what I did was, as I was kind of jotting down some notes about what I could quick say, I decided just to write up a sort of off-the-cuff memo that I shared with you and Ian. It should be in your email if you haven't seen it yet. And there's three things. One being the kind of the quick memo that I drafted about the high points as I see them, a carryover log, and then also just the I think 35 pages of budget numbers. So I think my best guess as to how this goes well is you read the memo, take your time to go through the budget, and I mean, take your time in the next week, because we're turning that around already. But then we have any questions that you have in the meantime, you would send them to me, and if there's any questions I receive, I can send them out kind of in a standardized format so everyone knows what questions there are. But then we come back, with answers to any of those questions, ready to discuss. I do think that there's some opportunities to talk about some of the salaries and compensation, and if there was, targeted compensation like we may have talked about in the past. I want to talk through that and see what the council thinks we can include or not include, and where we want to go. So I think at this point, it's more, setting up, here's the memo, read it. It's kind of my direct thoughts and conversation in my head about the budget. And then just communicate with me, and then hopefully we can have sort of a final discussion about it on Tuesday, where we can really get ready to put something together for publishing and adoption.
I just want to mention that I'm just looking through this now, and I really appreciate the way that it seems to be organized. I think it makes it read really easily, just compared to, I've only been a part of one other budget process, and I know a lot of you up here haven't been a part of any of processes, but I really appreciate the way that this is laid out. So thank you for putting that together. I think in general speaking, I mean, if we start having a lot of questions and more issues, we can always put together a special meeting too. I think it's just important for council to know that, but I want you guys to, hopefully everybody can find the time to really dig into this stuff. Reach out to Kyle if you have questions. I think that's the best place to start. I think interesting stuff here. But, yeah.
And, it's very complicated, and, some things, they don't always make sense how they're done. So I haven't got a lot of questions yet. So please, give me any questions you have, or even if you just want to discuss budget strategy or budget, position and why you might do one thing over the other. That's the kind of stuff I enjoy. You'll probably fall asleep, but I'll enjoy it. So please feel free to, reach out with anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Kyle immediately right now? No?
How did you do all this?
How do you do? He's a robot.
That's really my only question too. I've only superficially glanced over it, but it's so organized. Yeah. Thank you.
It was one of those kind of manic downloads from what the comments in my head getting out on paper. So hopefully you can follow them and it's logical, but it went well. So I hope it's useful.
And I'm just baffled and amazed at Kyle's budget simplification process. It's wonderful.
Okay, guys. All right. Number 21, convene to close session pursuant to 1985 sub 1 sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data for any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Columbus Police Local WPPA number 237 Employment Agreement. With that, I'll take a motion to move into closed session for the reasons read.
Alder Pipeline will make a motion to move into closed session for the reasons read.
I'll second.
All right, Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Pifron.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, with that, we are in closed session.